Welcome to the collection of the wildest and craziest AITA Reddit stories of all time. From wild betrayals to shocking twists, these tales will leave you questioning who is really in the wrong. Let's dive in together. The first story for this collection is from User is a Dumbass. AITA for wanting to have an abortion even though a family is offering to adopt? Okay, throwaway account. I am a 23-year-old female. I have been in a relationship with 25M for over 5 years, living together for 2. A week ago, I found out that I was pregnant. Trust me when I say, we were being as safe as possible, and it was a huge shock to us. We both talked and agreed that abortion is the best answer. So we made an appointment with the doctor. We have a mandatory reflection period after the first appointment and before the procedure. My next appointment is 3 days from today. So, last Friday, I started feeling overwhelmed at work and was kinda losing it in the bathroom when a coworker walked in. She is really sweet and one of the senior managers who helped me out a lot in the beginning. I spilled my beans and she was very comforting and calming me. But later that day, she asks me if I was willing to have the baby so that she and her husband can adopt. Turns out both her and her husband have fertility issues and there was no way to get pregnant, and they have been adopting for a long time now. She said she will help me with the pregnancy, help with the cost, put in a good word with boss at work, so my career won't be affected, etc. I was really shocked and said I will think about it. After thinking about it over the weekend, I decided that I didn't want to do this. I was already feeling too overwhelmed, and I didn't want to carry a baby only to give him her up. I don't think I can handle that. So, on Monday, I went to her office and told her about my decision. As soon as I said no, she started crying, and I just felt so guilty. Because she is a sweet person and would be a lovely mother. I kept trying to explain to her, and she wasn't willing to listen, and she kept telling me to get out. I thought she needed a moment and left, but after that, she refused to hear my apology or even listen to my reasoning. She was avoiding me all day. Some of my colleagues came to know about this, and everyone was coming over to my desk to change my mind. I was almost breaking down, and I kept saying no. Everyone thinks I am the asshole for preferring abortion when there is a good family willing to adopt. Needless to say, I was quite upset when I got home. When I told my BF about this, he didn't think I was the asshole, but he did say this was a good idea, and he would prefer this over abortion. And he asked me to think about this for some more time and to postpone my appointment to Monday. But I said no, and that I am going to this appointment and that it's final. Then, he got mad and said that I wasn't even willing to think about it, and that was the least I could do. He was also mad that I wasn't even willing to take his advice, and that the baby is also his. I just went to the study room and locked the door and didn't talk to him after that. And also, I took WFH today because I didn't want to face anyone right now. I haven't spoken to anyone since last night. This whole week has been an emotional roller coaster. So, AITA? Edits. First of all, thank you for all support. ESP. People who DM'd me with personal stories and words of comfort. 2. To the people who are DMing me with horrendous links and abuses, please stop. It is already hard enough for me. 3. For all the pro-life people here. Your main argument is that the baby is another life, and my bodily anatomy doesn't matter because there is a person's life at stake. You do realize that if a person doesn't consent to organ donation before death, his organs will not be harvested despite the several lives which can be saved. Why? Bodily autonomy. A corpse's bodily autonomy is respected despite the several lives which are at stake, while a woman's bodily autonomy is not being respected over a bunch of cells. One life, if a person is very far along the pregnancy. Just something for you to think about. Lastly, I am sorry I couldn't respond personally to everyone, but I have read most, if not all, comments here, and know that I am deeply thankful for everyone taking time to help me. OP is not an AH for making a decision about her own body for which she has every right. If abortion is a best option for her mental and physical well-being, she should proceed with it. Other people's opinion doesn't matter, and no one can dictate her life. As for scores, I would rate OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump onto the next story from OK Entrepreneur 3741. AITA for telling my family how I feel, for wanting to leave. My fiancé, 23M, and I, 25F, moved to another state with the rest of my bio family. During this time, I was pregnant. The move was really fast, and I felt like my family wasn't prepared. I told my mother that we would try it for a year, and if we didn't like it, we would do something else. Well, this last year has been hell. I let my parents talk me into wanting to move with them because they needed my name in the house, and I thought it would be better for my baby in the long run. Long story short, things were said to me about not unpacking their things fast enough or not organizing anything. We did. There's 14 of us, and my fiance and I left to unload it until they could bring the rest of our stuff. I milked my pregnancy and didn't do anything. We gave up all our savings to get everyone over here. My parents maxed out my credit card. They put my name on the tractor here they got. It all came to a head during my birth. My fiance got into it with my family because he thought I wanted everyone to be quiet, so he was trying to ensure that. Plus, we did a home birth, so he was stressed out because we were an hour away from a hospital that has a pediatric unit. He snapped at my family for things. This caused a whole storm. During my birth, my dad said something and left made a sense. 2 of my brothers left to the bar because they were going to fight him, supposedly. The younger 3 went upstairs. My mom sat on the stairs until our son came out. I was moved into my bedroom to get stitches. My fiance left to go upstairs and didn't come back for a while. I guess my dad was yelling at him and threatening to kick his ass. I didn't know at the time and was asking for my mom, and no one could find her. My grandma came in and held my hand. My mom came in at the end, looked at my son, said something to me, and left. I didn't see them until the next day when I woke up in the afternoon. I went upstairs with my son to see them, and I got ambushed about the birth and how I shouldn't marry him, that he was controlling. I was hormonal and wasn't thinking straight, so I came down here and got into an argument with him about it. The next 2 days I got sick. I ended up going septic and had to stay in the hospital for a week. I told my fiance something was wrong, and I asked my mom to come down because I was scared. She tried not to come down here at all because of my fiance. I felt like I had to beg her to come check on me. Things were awkward, but I thought they were on the mend. My fiance apologized and was doing a lot to mend their relationship between them. I have had hard feelings about my birth because I felt abandoned by them, and that they put their emotions in front of my son's birth. Well, finally, I blew up on my parents the other day. We came home from visiting my fiance's sister. My dad was trying to put his cold hands on me, and I told him to stop like 3 times. The 4th time he went to do it, I snapped a bit and shoved his hands away. My dad then mumbled something under his breath and left. He came out 10 minutes later, and I was sitting at the table when he told me that I didn't want to start anything with him because I wouldn't like it. That's when I went off about what his problem is. Apparently, I didn't specifically tell him we were going to his sister's. I don't know how he didn't know I told everyone for a month. Even my aunt, who was here for a week and a half, knew I was going. I told him that. He told me he didn't know anything, and that it was my fault. That I act different now that my fiancé was home full time. I spend more time with them, but I don't see how else. They are the family I am making, so I think that's fine. My father then said he was going to kick my fiancé's butt. Every time I say something he or one of my brothers doesn't like, the first thing is to threaten to fight him. I told them how I felt abandoned at the end of my birth. This sent my dad into a fury. He told me that I was a spoiled, ungrateful brat because I said I felt that way. That I needed them for money. I wouldn't if they would stop taking everything. FS, my mom has taken over my bank account because hers got hacked. My dad told me, you, and that I could never take that back. My brother told me that I deserved the rude things they said to me during my pregnancy. When I didn't react the way he wanted, he would get CM away from my nose and try to stare me down. When that didn't work, he resorted to trying to say things to hurt my feelings. Like I abandoned them during my birth and it was all my fault. I want to leave and head back to the area we are from. I can't feel safe here with this whole situation. The thing is, I know it will start another fight. My biofam is notorious for cutting people off if they don't like what you did. We wanted to leave and not tell anyone, but I feel like I can't do that to my mom, grandma, and little brothers. I still want them in my life and my son's, but I can't live here anymore. I'm not happy and I don't feel safe. I guess I'm asking if I am thinking clearly. I should tell my mom and them and just not say anything to the rest? Or if I tell my mom and leave a note. I want them in my life so bad. OP is not an AH for prioritizing the well-being of her son. OP's family members are AHs for being manipulative and abusive towards her. OP's decision to leave them is completely justified. She did nothing wrong. So I would rate OP family 2.5 out of 5. an OP 0 on the AH scale. Let's now jump on to the next story from Holt's own. AITA. If I didn't send a Christmas gift to my abusive mom. My mother is extremely manipulative, and I suspect that she is a narcissist among other things. While she has done a lot of things to support me, like paying for my studies, buying me clothes, going on family trips that she would often ruin, going to the restaurant, and other things, when I told this to my friends and partners, they all said that this is the bare minimum. And it kind of shocked me because I hadn't realized and felt bad about being so rightfully upset at my mom. She has ruined my life and the way I feel things and express myself in so many different ways. She is also ableist, despite having 2 disabled children, including me, racist, transphobic, Islamophobic, fatphobic, and more. I could write a lot about things she said to me or about other people, but that would probably take too much time, and that really isn't the point of my post. Basically, she is very mean to me and other people, very bitter and judgmental. It is very draining to be around her because she always complains about everything, and I will never be good enough for her. The most recent thing that she's done was throwing a tantrum in front of my partners when she, my dad, and my brother were visiting. I moved from my home country to another, and I feel so much better now that I'm away from her. This wasn't the first time my girlfriend was meeting my mom, but my boyfriend hadn't met her before, and the first impression was not the best. She got extremely upset because, and I swear I'm not making this up, I didn't make her lasagna at my house like she had wanted me to. Mind you, we live in quite a small house just for 2 or 3 people, so having double the amount wasn't the most comfortable, and my mom isn't the skinniest person alive. Both my partners were standing. My parents and brother were on the couch, and I had to sit on the desk chair by the coffee table, so I was not exaggerating. We argued the day before because my girlfriend had told me that having them over for dinner was going to be extremely overwhelming, and that we wouldn't have the space, and she, my mom, reluctantly accepted that there wouldn't be any lasagna, but snacks instead. When she was looking around the house, she kept making rude comments and eventually said, "You're not going to like this, but I, for one, think that there was plenty of space for us to eat here. It was really selfish of you not to make the lasagna. If you didn't want us over, you just had to say so." And that made me snap, which ended in her storming out of the house and basically telling me and my partners to f off. Great first impression, thanks Mom. The day after, we had to help them get to the airport, mainly because they don't speak English, and I had to help with directions. And, this is kind of funny, when we got into the subway, she power walked all the way to the other end of the train to sit as far away as possible. My dad felt and looked completely hopeless and disappointed, and he had to sit with Mom for the whole hour instead of spending the last vacation time with us. Poor guy. And then we got to the airport. This is even more funny. I handed the passports to the ticket lady, and my mom refused to hand me hers and was almost teasing me about it, just raising her passport away from me so I wouldn't touch it, only to eventually slam it on the desk in front of everyone. Yikes. I feel bad for my dad because he has to live with her 24/7. Anyway, she didn't bother saying bye to anyone and hasn't spoken to me since the evening she stormed out of the house in July. As far as I can remember, I've always gotten the silent treatment when my mom was upset. Even when I didn't know what I had done wrong, she would ignore me for days at a time, until I would basically crawl at her feet begging for forgiveness, or write her letters apologizing for something I didn't even know I had done. Either that, or yell at me and say extremely mean things to me, and then come back crying over how bad of a mom she is. And despite me telling her multiple times how harmful it is, especially for growing children, to give the silent treatment, it's always her go-to punishment towards me, or sometimes my dad. I probably forgot some details, but I think you get the picture. Now I have quite a small family, and Christmas at home always makes me feel depressed, especially since I moved out to another country and experienced Christmas in a big and loving family that is my partner's. Being at my parents' or around my mom makes my mental health go extremely low, and I literally start feeling suicidal again, despite being clean for several years now. I feel guilty for not coming this year either, although I physically can't, even if I wanted to because of a recent surgery. But I still want to send a package for my dad, my brother, and my aunt. But I don't know if my mom really deserves a gift. My dilemma is, if I don't send her a gift, I will hear about it for the rest of my life, and she might ruin Christmas for my family like she does every year. Again, I have a lot of stories of things she's done because of her ridiculous tantrums. But if I do send her a gift, it's like she wins again. It's like I'll be crawling at her feet begging for forgiveness like I did as a child. I don't want to be submissive to my mother anymore. I quite frankly dislike her. While it feels very nice not to bother sending her messages every single day or suffer her mean responses or useless comments, I still feel some guilt, which I assume is normal, considering how manipulative she is. I don't want her to have power over me again. Would it be wrong not to send her a gift? She also has her birthday early in January, and I don't want to wish her a happy birthday either, but it feels so wrong. I feel really stuck. I don't even know if she is going to give me anything for that matter. I think I've said anything now. I really tried to keep it short, but I have so many things I could say about her that could probably contribute to the not sending her a gift option, but I'm afraid it will be too long to read. Just ask if you want any funny stories, I guess. Oh, and this is of any use. I am 21 and my mom is over 60. TLDR. Would I be the asshole for sending a gift to my aunt, my dad, and my brother, but not my mom, considering she has been abusive to me all my life and hasn't spoken a single word to me since July? OP is not an AH for not sending a Christmas gift to his mother. OP's mom is an AH for being abusive and manipulative. OP is a victim of her toxic behavior. OP did nothing wrong by setting boundaries with his mother. His reaction is completely justified. So I would rate OP's mom 2.5 out of 5 and OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now move on to the next story from Sora X3. AITA, for not wanting to bail my mother out of foreclosure of her house, cause my brother who lives there should have paid rent. My mom is already heading towards her third unfilled mortgage payment. She is 65 and recently quit her job between October and Nov to have a vacation. I don't judge her wanting to do what she wants at her age and don't hold her against her. But she was fully aware she has $200 USD in the bank, and next month mortgage payment was going to add up. Today she got the call from bank, and she already afraid she might head to foreclosure if we don't do something about it this week. I can pay it. I can get a bank loan for it. I don't want to for a very strong reason. My older brother, 36, has been living there since we were 3rd grade. He lives with his 3 growing children in one room, GF in his, and GF's 18-plus son in the back little room. She used to live there up till this year when they got into a terrible fight and finally decided to live with me upstate. I'm paying for food for us. I take her shopping when I can and usually never say no. I help get her medication and checkup set up. I'm going to pay her rent this month too. I'm taking responsibility to ensure she is happy as can be, compared to taking care of 3 young kids that the father, my brother, neglects and makes her pick up before after school. She feeds them every day without reimbursing her. She even cleans their clothes and the house every day, like a loving grandmother would do while still working to pay the house and bills because he never did. But I got fed up this clear mistreatment. Sure, I came back to live with them a couple of years and didn't pay rent, but that also involved being forced to picking up his kids and being someone that actually cared what they were becoming and needed, the kids. He never paid many bills, if at all. Had water shut off twice of the time I was there, 'cause he never paid. He still owed my mother $1,500 for that BTW. She paid thousands and worked endless nights and weekends to keep us afloat as kids and feed us when our father got sick and died of HIV/AIDS. And yes, she has it too. I took her on April 2024, and it was expected he pay some money towards rent now that he had the house all to himself. It's been 8 months. He never helped this woman pay even 1 month's rent up till now. He still lives there. Now they are both mad at me 'cause it's just a loan. Nothing else matters. No, that's not how it works. He has lived there for 25 plus years. I told her this would happen, that it should be his responsibility to become an adult like the rest of us and work for the big man, even if it's terrible. She is though just as stubborn and says she will take responsibility and it belongs to her to resolve it. Neither can answer a simple question I asked. What are going to do so this doesn't happen again? Neither had a good answer. Brother called today, and his response is yelling at me, and that I don't understand. Mother was as said above, going in pointless loops to justify a reason that she has it any control when she clearly doesn't. I come across heartless and don't want my nieces and nephew being homeless. A part of me doesn't really care. They have a plan to sell cars to get the money later and pay me back, and that my question is pointless. My brother has 8 to 10 cars in the backyard rotting away, but part of me is willing to let her lose her house so she can understand who is really the burden in all this. And to add, he has let the house rot from the inside out. Garage is rotten house. Cockroaches own this house since I was a kid. The aforementioned 8 to 10 cars in a backyard like we're a impound. Outdated everything, and in need of dire repairs or rebuilding. All while claiming it's not his house or responsibility until he owns the house. You can't deny responsibility and expect to own the damaged house after our mother passes away. Not to mention they argued all the damn time. It was completely a toxic environment with him specifically. Always about bills, about kids, about money, where to move his junk. Car parts unnecessarily taking space in the house. He has in the past put his hands on her. Why she needs to defend him, I don't know. Am I the AH? OP is not an AH for refusing to give financial support to her mother and brother. OP's mother and brother are AHs for creating troubles for OP instead of taking accountability. OP did nothing wrong. Her decision is completely justified. So, I would rate OP's mother 2.5 out of 5, OP's brother 3.5, and OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump onto the next story from acceptable_secret 363. AITA for being upset because my dad went behind our backs and drank again after promising to be sober. A man, 53M white, gets into a car crash late at night while driving under the influence, which causes him to total his car and end up getting hurt. Paramedics arrive and take him to the hospital, and the entire drive there consists of him saying that he wants to die and that he wants to kill himself, and he is kept under supervision while recovering in the hospital. His wife, 47F Mexican, arrives at the hospital and manages everything on her own after she speaks to him. She speaks with the insurance, gets a good lawyer, and manages to bring money together to pay off the immediate fines and prices with the help of her brothers. A few days later, he is discharged from the hospital and comes home again and tries to speak with his children. His 2 youngest daughters, 9F and 12F, hear him out, but the eldest, 16F, doesn't even want to look at him. Eventually, she comes around and he promises to remain sober and to put his family first. A few weeks pass and everyone is working better. The kids are doing fine, his wife has a job with longer hours, and he finds a decent job. He takes AA classes and is slowly moving forward. A key thing to keep in mind, he totaled his car under his wife's credit, and they are left with one less car. So, his wife gives him the keys to her car for him to drive to work, with the condition that if he drinks again, she will take back the car, and he will have to move around on public transportation. He's in his 5 senses, and agrees with these terms. However, he is becoming more irritable as the days go by. His body is craving alcohol again. His family notices, and they do everything to keep him calm and happy. They reassure him and are positive, and encourage him to keep doing well, as they are proud of him. Then, because his wife is working more hours, she has a bit of pocket money. She decides to take her daughters out to the mall for a day where they can pick something they want, like a doll, press-on nails, and a sweater, and she can finally get her hair done after months of not being able to. Until the next day. The dad drinks again, but no one says anything as he is drunk, and arguing with a drunk person is stupid. They will not understand or listen. Everyone goes to bed, and he believes he is off the hook. The next morning comes. His wife gets ready for work, and the kids get ready for school. Suddenly, 16F hears her parents arguing down the hallway. She goes and checks on them. Her father is arguing with her mother, demanding her to give him her car keys as he has to go to work. She stays firm and denies him, reminding him of the agreement they had. He becomes increasingly angry and threatens to hit her, and instead takes the other set of keys she had, taunting her with them. She manages to get them back and heads out to get the car, and her children follow behind her. Then, they see their dog, out of his crate. He is allowed to be out of the crate if someone is home, otherwise he will remain in it. But the girls fear for the dog's safety, so they put him in his crate. The father calls out to them, saying that he is still home, so the dog can stay outside with him. 12F says that he never closes the dog crate, so she's doing for him, and so the dog stays safe. He shoves her back and tells them to get the f*** out to their mother. 16F has had enough, so she grabs her sisters and is walking out the door when she hears her father call them pitas. One of the worst slurs in Spanish, wears in a horrible Latin accent, as he doesn't speak Spanish, but his wife and children do, so he knew it would hurt even more. He says, "F you all," to his daughters, and 16F yells, "Well, f you too," and slams the front door before leaving to go to school. A few hours later, 16F checks her phone. She received a notification from her father's email. She has both her parents' emails. It was a confirmation receipt for a $430 flight ticket from LA to New York, departing at 10 p.m. the same day. 16F sends the email to her mother and asks her about it. Her mother reassures her to just focus at school. Everything will be sorted out soon. When they arrived at home, they found some of her father's belongings gone. 2 weeks later, he reaches out to 16F once, begging her to convince her mother to let him come back home. He has avoided talking about anything with her mother and told her to figure it out on her own. They are now having trouble figuring out what they are going to do to pay rent, bills, and what will happen with the legal troubles. Her father's court date is approaching, and if he doesn't show up, he will be arrested for a DUI. What is your opinion? Should her mother have let him drive the car? Is he in the wrong? OP is not an AH for refusing her father. OP's father is an AH for being abusive towards his family. OP did nothing wrong by refusing her father's request to let him home again. OP's father has broken his promise by not prioritizing his family. So, I would rate OP's father 3.5 and OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now move on to the next story from Fickle_election4835. AITA. If I stopped talking to my ex's family altogether? Me, 18F, and my BF, 19M, have been together for about 6 months, but have known each other longer, as he's my best friend's cousin. In August, he left for MTC. We're both LDS, though I converted and he was born in, and he didn't talk to me at all. We stayed together and planned to get married when we got home. Up until the day he left, he was telling me how much he loved me and couldn't wait to marry me, etc. I figured the radio silence was because he was busy. He's a pretty strict rule follower, and I assumed he would be focusing on his new role. Well, a month went by, then 2, then 3. I was getting his group emails when he would send them irregularly, and finally yesterday, I get my first real contact from him. It was a voice note. He broke up with me. The fish was basically that he wrote me a letter I never received, and that he had never really been in love with me. He had just tried really hard to. He said he couldn't marry me if he knew his heart wasn't in it, and I deserved more than a lukewarm husband. And then he offered to pay me back the money I used to go visit him and his family back before he left, as if it was the money that mattered most. He seemed really fixated on it. I completely get his emotions and feelings. Apparently, he'd been feeling this way since back when he asked me out, and was just too afraid to say anything. I'm a little hurt. He asked me out despite knowing his feelings, because my feelings went from being a crush that would blow over in a month to now, I'm in love with him. I've never been in love before, and typically I'm really good at guarding my heart, so I'm not sure how he got through all the defenses so easily, especially with, apparently fake, sentiments. I'm just glad he finally told me now. I was getting really upset at the lack of communication since talking used to be our favorite thing to do, and I was expecting to still chat once a week, but nope. Completely ghosted for months. His family and I are really close. My best friend is his cousin, and her parents are mother and father figures to me. His own parents and I grew very fond and close with each other. I started calling his mom Mama last name, and his sister and I are also very close. She's little, and I absolutely adore her, and having a baby sister again. His brothers and I weren't as close, but his older brother reached out to me this morning to confirm I was all right. I love his family so much, but their son hurt me pretty bad. My heart is by no means made of glass. It's got fortresses protecting it. I've been through a lot, and in spite of that, I'm still going strong. My heart will heal, but it will take some time. I feel like I need to rip the Band-Aid off and just cleanse myself of him, so I'm thinking I may just cut him off. He wanted to stay friends, send his family their Christmas gifts, and then stop talking to them as well. The thing is, his dad, mom, and brother all checked in on me and I feel really bad for wanting to not talk to them anymore. I love them so much, but it really hurts, and I don't even want to know when he comes home, or if he brings home another girl. Nothing. I want to be oblivious to his existence. I already unfriended him on all social media, and deleted any posts dash pictures of him and I together. I would feel horrible to stop talking to his family too, because they did nothing wrong. But at the same time, I'm not sure it would be healthy for me to stay in contact for the next 2 years, and then have to break my heart all over again by him coming home and having to not speak with them then, because I won't want to hear anything about him, and they'll give me life updates with him in them. So AITA, if I stop talking to my ex's family, is there another solution I may not be seeing? OP is not an AH for prioritizing her emotional well-being. She is going through a difficult breakup. OP's ex-boyfriend is an AH for breaking up with OP over a voice note. OP's decision to protect and distance herself from this difficult situation is completely justified. So, I would rate OP's ex-boyfriend 3.5 and OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. AITA for aborting my baby after seeing my boyfriend, messaging other women, and interacting with them on social media? My boyfriend of 5.5 years has been wanting a baby for a while now, and he asked me many times to have one with him. Before agreeing, I told him I would only have a baby if we agreed to do right by each other and ensure our baby is in a 2-parent household, as I want the best for any child I ever have, and don't want them to experience things that I did. We agreed we were on the same page. We tried for months, and finally I was pregnant. A couple of nights ago, I saw he has been responding to women's Instagram stories. During the time we were trying for a baby, I was actually pregnant. We didn't know as it was very early, and he flirted and gave a woman his number. We have had issues like this in the past, but I thought we were on the same page as far as starting a family and both doing right. Now I don't want to be with him as he broke trust and did something I don't want to forgive because he did this while I am pregnant with the baby he begged me for. I feel he will never change if he was willing to do these things while I am pregnant and while trying to conceive. I don't want to raise my baby in a broken home as a single mom and have to do parent. I don't want the baby to have to experience a home with no dad and with me struggling to do it alone. I don't feel like it's fair to the baby or to me. I feel terrible because both of our families know and are very excited. I wanted this baby and family, but now things are not the same. Am I wrong if I choose to abort? OP is not the AH for considering an abortion. Given her boyfriend's repeated betrayal, she has every right for prioritizing her well-being and aborting the child. If she doesn't go for abortion, she may have to face unstable future, which will of course ruin his life. As for scores, I would rate OP 0 and OP's boyfriend 3.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump on to the next story from SM Gifts Throw A. AITA for immediately donating the gifts my stepmother bought for my children. I, 34F, have no contact with my stepmother, Mary. Long story not worth explaining. Edit. I loosely explained in a comment. It's been 5 years since I cut her off from my and my family's lives. As such, she hasn't seen my son, 8M, since he was 3 years old, and she's never met my daughter, 4F. Throughout the years, she has attempted to contact me and my kids several times. My father used to help her sometimes. He'd tell me how awful she felt, how much she wanted to meet my daughter, and that the kids needed their grandma. I've never considered her a grandparent, as both my mother and mother-in-law are active in their lives. Several fights later, my father apologized and stopped assisting her, but Mary still tries to get in touch with me every now and then. I always state I have no interest in seeing her or allowing her to be a part of my children's lives. My son's birthday was in September. The day of, neither of my kids were home. A large box was delivered to our building. I opened it to find more than a dozen new toys for my children, along with a note that read, "Grandma Mary loves you both." As I later found out, she had bought the toys on a recent trip to the US. I couldn't think of that as anything besides a manipulation tactic. My children are barely aware that she exists. Why would she send them both a box full of toys on my son's birthday? I also think she planned the delivery for a time she thought the kids would be home so that they'd see the toys immediately. Either way, my husband and I decided not to keep any of the toys. We donated them all throughout October. The kids never saw any of them. Last week my father called me. He said Mary had just told him about the toys and wanted to know whether the kids liked them. I told him the truth, and we had an argument. My father called me cruel and ungrateful for what I did. He said he understands Mary and I don't get along, but she still cared enough to spend hundreds of dollars on a loving gesture for my children, and the least I could have done was let them know about it. I honestly couldn't imagine keeping those toys, but I'd be lying if I said the amount of money spent on them didn't make me feel guilty. AITA Edit. Update. Hey guys, thank you for your input. Many of you stated you wouldn't be able to make any judgment without knowing why I have no contact with Mary. I think that's completely fair. I explained it better in the comments, and I recommend reading them. But Mary was awful to me when I was young. I loathe talking about it, though therapy has been helping with that. But it stemmed from the fact that I wouldn't allow her to be a second mother to me. I went into low contact with her in my early 20s, and she'd still treat me like crap whenever I saw her. When my son was born, Mary begged me to give her a second chance. She apologized for upsetting me and promised she had changed. I warned her that if she ever overstepped or even remotely hinted at going back to her old ways, she'd never see me or my family again. To be honest, I'm surprised she lasted 3 years. I didn't clarify that in my original post because not only is this something I have trouble talking about, but I also didn't think it was relevant. I was asking about the donations, not whether I was justified in cutting ties with Mary, but I do agree that it's best to have the complete picture before making judgment calls, so I apologize for withholding that. Another thing I didn't mention is that Mary never had children of her own, and my only sister is child-free. My kids are the only grandchildren in the family, which I think is why Mary wants to see them so badly. Anyway, I went through your comments and organized a list of things I wanted to say to my father. I thought about making one for Mary as well, but I doubt she'd actually listen to it. I spoke to my father on Saturday. He said he talked with his wife. Apparently, Mary bought the gifts because it broke her heart to be unable to watch my kids grow up, and she hoped the toys would at least let them know how much she loved them. My father also said that Mary told him about the gifts. He's insistent he had no idea, because it had been a while, and me and the kids hadn't thanked her yet. My husband and I have our children say "thank you" through voice messages whenever they get a gift from someone who isn't nearby. We've done that for my father before, so I think that's what Mary was expecting. I explained that it didn't matter how thoughtful he thought Mary's gesture was. When I cut ties with her, I cut her off completely. That means no gifts, no phone calls, and no contact with my children, directly or not. She can claim to love them all she wants, but she will never have any involvement in their lives. We had another argument, but I put my foot down. I told my father that if he ever attempts to assist her in any way, or brings up Grandma Mary to my children, he will never see me again. I'll allow him to be a part of his grandkids' lives, but he needs to accept that his wife won't be. Ultimately, my father agreed, but I intend to watch him closely from now on. I don't want to cut contact with him, but this will be his final chance. If he screws this up, he's done. While I'm not 100% confident this will last, I'm still happy with this outcome. I've been going through a fairly stressful time at work, and it feels great to have this weight off my shoulders now. More importantly, I feel like I'm well equipped to deal with whatever comes next. I don't intend to write any further updates. Once again, thank you. Edit. Second update. I really didn't think I'd update again, but I figured I'd let you know that Mary sent us another box. This time, my father warned me. Last week, he sent me a text that read, "Mary is sending Christmas gifts for the kids. I promise I just found out." I was at work, and sure enough, the box was there when I got home. My husband and I managed to take it to our bedroom before our children saw it. The box was smaller than the previous one, and we counted 10 toys with Christmas wrapping inside. 6 for my daughter, 4 for my son. There was also another note, which read pretty much the same as the last one, with an added, "I'm sorry you didn't get my other gifts." I decided to text Mary this time. I unblocked her and wrote the following. "Anything you try to give me or my children will be donated immediately. Please stop attempting to contact us. You will never be allowed near my family." I then blocked her again. This was my first time unblocking, or even contacting, her in 5 years. The next day, I spoke to my father. He said Mary didn't tell him she was sending me the box until after doing so. He'd been out of town for a week at that point, and she hadn't said anything about buying my kids more presents before he left. She let it slip to him over the phone and then begged him not to tell me. Apparently, Mary was distraught at my text. That's all I know about how she's reacting to this. My father is doing his Christmas shopping right now, and there are a number of reasons why I don't think he was involved in this. Still, I don't feel like I can trust him right now. I told him he will see me and my family less often than usual for the next few months. We'll see each other on Christmas Eve, party at my cousin's. Mary was banned years ago. And then in February for my aunt's birthday, weekend trip. Mary's not coming. Besides that, I intend to remain in low contact with him for a while. I don't intend to keep that up forever, but I want to be able to trust him again. My father said he understood. I know a lot of you wanted me to cut my father off. I'm not sure I can explain why, but I don't want to do that. Even if I did, I'm not ready to. It might happen in the future, and I'm well aware it should be happening now. But I do think we still have a shot at making this work. This entire week was crap. The first time Mary sent us the gifts, I was just confused. This time, I was very upset. I cried when I read her note. I am feeling much better now, though. My husband and I donated the new toys over the weekend, and getting rid of them felt great. I am very glad we managed to protect our children from this. Also, let me add one final time. I came to AITA to ask whether I was wrong for donating the gifts, not for cutting ties with Mary. So, if anyone else intends to tell me I should allow her in my kids' lives, don't bother. I will not budge on this. I don't think I have anything else to add. Thank you all, and happy holidays. OP is not the AH for donating the gifts. She's enforcing clear boundaries with her stepmother to protect her children from a toxic influence, prioritizing her family's well-being and peace over appeasing her stepmom's manipulative gestures is entirely justified. As for scores, I would rate OP 0 and OP's stepmom 2.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump onto the next story from Cupcake Practical 9626. AITA for not attending my best friend's wedding and not talking to her since. Hi guys, I'm just curious and thought I'll get some outside advice. I had this best friend named Steph. We clicked really well and have all the same likes, etc. I've known her about 3 years. One day, Steph tells me that her and her boyfriend, let's call him Tom, are getting married and would love if I was there. At this time, all of us, me, my husband, Steph, her boyfriend, are all living with my parents. They had got married over a Zoom call, since Tom's dad is a pastor, and they had family and friends join the call to be a part of the ceremony. I didn't want to miss it, so I left work early, which counted against me, drove to pick up flowers and decorations and food to make that moment for them as special as possible. I had ballons, flowers, a trail of roses, music for their first dance, and I decorated the patio where we can eat after. It was really nice. Fast forward a bit, and we were all moved out of my parents' house, and I received an invitation to their wedding. They wanted to have the wedding they didn't get to have. The wedding was going on the same month as a vacation I planned with my husband and our mutual friends. The wedding is a 5 hours drive, and we would have to get a hotel to stay overnight. At this time, I have a 9-month-old daughter, and kids are not allowed at the wedding. I did try my best to plan to go. I had a babysitter lined up, and my parents and my husband and I were going to drive down together and split the cost for travel and room expenses. Steph was aware of our plans. Long story short, my dad was extremely sick the week of the wedding and couldn't travel due to him being on dialysis. He called Steph and told her he couldn't make it. Steph called me and asked me if I was still going, and I told her IDK and that I'm trying to figure it out. Steph was mad at me and said I should have planned better and gave me a deadline to let her know if I'm coming or not. Later that day, she messaged me and told me not to bother and that she already removed my husband and I off the guest list. She stated again that I could have planned better and that she's really hurt and disappointed. She stated that when we all moved, I've never made an effort to come visit, but she's visited us too, 3 times, etc. I just apologized and told her that I want to be there and that the last-minute change in plans is what's making it difficult and that I couldn't afford to do the trip. She stopped responding, and the day of the wedding I sent her a MSG along the lines of, "I hope this day is everything you dreamed it would be," and apologized again for not being there. She never responded, and we haven't spoken since. I figured I'll reach out to her a few days after the wedding, but after I thought about it, I realized that my friend is extremely self-centered and decided against it. Here's why. When I moved out of my parents' place, my brother and I decided to get a place big enough for my husband and daughter and his pregnant wife and daughter. My brother and I get along very well, and we saw a great opportunity to save money by splitting the cost of living. When I talked about this with Steph, she had nothing but negative things to say. Along the lines of, if any of my friends see that, they would think you're weird, you should be an adult, etc. Another reason. When she moved out with Tom, they had a rocky start, and she called me daily to vent, and I made sure I was always available, and she knew I was there to support her. Another reason. When I told her I was pregnant, she was negative, and voiced how I should have this and that before getting pregnant, and that I'm crazy. My kid has never lacked in anything, and is extremely taken care of. Another reason. When I found out I was pregnant a second time, I told her, and got the same reaction. Unfortunately, I ended up having a miscarriage. When I told her, her response was, "You were in your first trimester, these things happen." We never spoke about it again. She never checked on me. I cried for weeks and had to take time off work because of how upset I was that I lost a kid. This happened a month before her wedding. It's upsetting that she disregards everything that I did do for her. I was there when she got married the first time, and was always supportive when she was down. She complained about us visiting, but I can't just drop everything and visit you. I have a family and a kid. Not to mention that on 2 other occasions, I told her that I'm able to visit, and she told me not to come on both occasions, but loves to say I didn't try to visit her. She even complained that it cost money to have me on the list, and I said I'll pay her back and asked her how much. She then says it's not about the money, but yet brings it up multiple times. Recently I've been thinking about reaching out to her, but after typing this out, I don't think I should. My husband certainly thinks I shouldn't. She still talks with my parents, and I found out she's having a baby. IDK, should I bury the hatchet? I'm not a person who holds a grudge, but still. LMK, your thoughts? OP is not the AH for not attending her friend's wedding. Steph's dismissive, self-centered behavior and lack of empathy toward OP's struggles suggest the friendship was one-sided, and in this situation, avoiding people like OP's friend is the best option. As for scores, I would rate OP 0 and OP's friends 3 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump onto the next story from Icy-Purpose 4990, AITA for no longer being friends with someone who doesn't even know who they are at 35 years old. So, this friend started out as a coworker. Most of my coworkers didn't have any patience for her, aside from myself and maybe 2 others. She definitely had her quirks with things like being high-strung, taking way too long to do certain tasks, making bigger deals out of things that truly didn't matter. She isn't a bad person by any means, but she bumped heads with a lot of people, and I definitely understand their frustrations. I felt bad for her, and the fact that she was always the odd man out, even though it didn't seem to bother her LOL. Also because it seemed as though she didn't have many friends in general, even though she supposedly went to this super prestigious college and was a debutante. So, when I would have little movie or wine nights at my house, I started to invite her, and she was super excited to be included. But this would end with her not leaving. Things would wind down. Everyone else would eventually go on their way. But not her. She would just make herself more comfortable and act like we were about to make a night of it. Even after giving the usual hints and saying things like, "Well, it's getting late." She wouldn't take the hint. I've never experienced someone acting this way, so I thought maybe I wasn't clearly conveying the fact that she needed to leave. This happened on a few occasions, with one time her claiming to be too drunk and just deciding to go help herself to laying down in my bed. I was completely taken aback, but also too tired to really deal with it, so in the morning, I expected her to just grab her stuff and go. Maybe even feel a little embarrassed that she just invited herself to a sleepover in my bed. Nope. She pops a squat at my kitchen table and asks if I have coffee. There were other things that happened as well. Even though she was in her mid-30s, she seemed to constantly be reinventing herself, which isn't necessarily a negative thing. But it would be because she liked a certain man and would turn herself into what she thinks they would want based on their hobbies, personality, likes. It reminded me very much of what high school girls do who have never been in a relationship before. So, they pretend to be someone else in order to get a guy's attention. For example, she liked this one guy. They only spoke over social media, Even though he lived locally, and they had been chatting for over a year, he never made any attempt to meet her. It was clear to the rest of us that he was being polite and nice, but had no real interest in her. But she knew one of his things was that he loved and owned a certain breed of dog. I so happened to have owned that breed of dog myself. So she wanted to have a wine night one evening. So my friend and I are at my house waiting on her. We are just having a laid-back girls' night, and so we are basically in pajamas. She shows up dressed to the nines with a full face of makeup and hair freshly done, as if we are going out on the town. She then proceeded to ask where my dog is. Mind you, she's not an animal lover, and has never shown an interest in any of my pets really. So, my friend and I are just looking at each other really confused. She finds my dog, hands us her phone, and asks us to take a bunch of pictures of her with the dog. Has a full-on photo shoot with my dog, LOL. Looking back on it, all I can do is laugh at how ridiculous it was. Of course, she posted the pics on social media, hoping to get the guy's attention. It didn't work the way she thought it would. We tried explaining to her in a nice way that if someone is truly interested in you, they will make an effort. But she's the type of person who has tunnel vision, and you can't tell her anything. Not too long after her failed photo shoot, she decided to randomly show up at his job to bring him a gift because she knew it was his birthday. Mind you, she has never met him before. They mostly talk on social media and have talked on the phone a few times. So, she just shows up at his job like a crazy person. She even takes a video with him and posted it online, and it's so second-handedly cringe and embarrassing because you can see how uncomfortable he is and just how awkward the entire thing is. Apparently, this also didn't go in her favor, and she stopped talking about him, blocked him on social media, and deleted the pictures of her and my poor dog from her page as well. But she was constantly doing things like this. Eventually, I, like everyone else, grew tired of her shenanigans, her lack of boundaries, the way she started to openly talk down on my other close friends because she didn't like them, and they didn't like her. She would make everything about herself. There was even an incident at my house where I was having a going-away party for one of my very close friends. My other friend and her husband, who were on the verge of a divorce, ended up having a verbal altercation, and she tried to stick her 2 cents, in which resulted in the husband slamming the door in her face as he was leaving. She got super upset and emotional, and basically wanted everyone to baby and comfort her. She kept saying, "He knows me, he knows me. I can't believe he treated me like that." That was another thing she did that was very strange, by the way. She could have one interaction with a person and claim that she knows them and they know her, like in a close way, not a passing acquaintance type of way, if that makes sense. She would also just randomly call or text me and tell me that she was going to be in my area in the next 30 to 45 minutes and wants to know if she can stop by. I told her on several occasions that I'm not a last-minute type of person and I need more notice. She would say, "Okay," then literally a week later, try the same thing again. Needless to say, I got sick of giving her the benefit of the doubt, and her presence was just bringing drama and stress to my life. So I started distancing myself. She actually ended up moving away for a while, which helped. But she came back not too long ago, and she's been trying the same things again, calling me out of nowhere and asking if she can come over because she's going to be in my area. I have told her no every single time. I just can't do it anymore, and I know I already put up with way more than most people would. But I truly did feel sorry for her and thought that maybe having a friend would help. But she clearly needs more than a friend. Yes, as far as I know, she is in therapy and has been for quite a while. Maybe she needs to find a different outlet of some type. OP is not the AH for ending the friendship. She tried supporting her friend despite her boundary issues and self-centered behavior, but the stress and drama became too much. Prioritizing personal well-being over a one-sided friendship is reasonable and justified. As for scores, I would rate OP's friend 3.5 and OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. My husband says I'm selfish for choosing my life over our baby in a pregnancy crisis. AITA? My husband and I were discussing hypothetical situations related to pregnancy and women's health. I asked him, if there was a life and death situation during childbirth and he had to choose between me and our unborn child, who would he choose? Without hesitation, he said he would choose the child. Then he asked, "Wouldn't you?" I told him I would want to be chosen to live. His response was to call me selfish for saying that. This has left me feeling conflicted. Is it wrong to want to prioritize my own life in that situation? How would you feel in my position? Update. Hi everyone. I didn't realize this could blow up and I am feeling overwhelmed. but also grateful for each and every one for taking the time in writing their thoughts and feelings about the matter. And to those who shared their birth experiences, know that you are seen, loved, and held. And to those who are expecting, I am praying for a safe birth for you and your babies. Just to be clear, I am not currently pregnant, but my husband and I are open to having children. The only reason why we had this conversation in the first place is because of my age, and there is a possibility for complications. I couldn't really get into more details for privacy reasons. Know that this matter will also be brought up in marriage counseling in hopes to gain more clarity in what has transpired. Again, thank you everyone from the bottom of my heart. OP is not the AH for prioritizing her life, especially in a hypothetical scenario. Rather, OP's husband is AH for his behavior, and his reaction lacks empathy and dismisses her valid concerns about potential health risks during pregnancy, so I would rate him 3.5 out of 5 on the AH scale, and OP gets a 0. Let's now jump on to the next story from Queasy_freedom, 8142. AITA for telling my daughter I don't want to continue paying for her private college if she changes her major. My daughter goes to a private school. The only reason she goes there is because the school was near enough to our house, 30 to 40 minute commute. It offered her a scholarship that covered about 65% of the cost, and it has a music program. She wanted to pursue music, specifically music education. She has always wanted to be a teacher. A music education degree would allow her to get better at her craft and get credentialed to teach. Because of music and her instrument not being offered at the community college, because the local state university did not accept her, and because sending her elsewhere, where we would have to pay for room and board, making the cost comparable to the private school, when you take scholarships into account, it made sense to send her to this school. It still costs us a lot though. Between Grandma and her dad and I combined, we are paying about $18,000 a year. She's currently in her junior year. She has 1.5 years left to graduate. She's burnt out. She may have possibly developed an eating disorder as well, and is struggling with depression. I've tried to get her to sign up for an outpatient program and take a semester medical leave, but she doesn't want to. I've tried getting her to find a therapist. She hasn't tried. She's seen a doctor and that's kind of it. Got prescribed an SSRI, and I've tried to encourage her to see a therapist first, but anyway, this is relevant because her state of mind is not the best. She's 20 years old. I can't sign her up for these things. She says she doesn't want to take a semester off and that she no longer wants to do this major. It's too much for her. She doesn't want to come back to it at a later time. She's set on changing her major to elementary education. The problem is that it isn't even possible to do and still finish at the college in time. She would need an additional semester, and that one would not include the scholarship, and it would be obviously very expensive because it's a private school. I refuse to pay for additional semesters. We can't afford that, and I've discouraged her from thinking she can take out a loan for that. Not with being a teacher as the job she'll end up with. She's tried talking to everybody at the college, trying to sort out how she could change her major and finish on time. Lots of roadblocks. She's crying about it all the time. Keeps getting her hopes up about something, but then it doesn't work out. The more I've thought about it, the more I feel I will resent her for having us pay our part of the next 1.5 years. So like a total of $27,000 between grandma and parents, just for her to get an elementary education degree. I would never have sent her to this college if it wasn't for the fact they had a music program that she could be a part of. In my opinion, if she is done with the idea of getting a music degree, she should leave this school and transfer to the local state college. It's way more affordable. They'll have the degree option she wants, and it won't matter if it takes her forever to finding. We can pay it for years and still save money. It's like $4,000 per year total. But she's very upset. She doesn't want to leave her private school, but she doesn't want a music degree anymore. I already communicated that I wasn't comfortable paying all this money for a degree not in music, that I think she should either find a way to finish music there or leave the place and do elementary education elsewhere. I know that a music education career wasn't necessarily worth a private education either, but it was my sort of compromise between something practical, an ed degree where you graduate with what you need for credentials, and something dreamy, music. I thought it was her dream, and I didn't want to kill it, so I supported her and paid for it, instead of sending her to community college. Starting to regret that choice now, but I'm not seeing the sense in staying there for something offered much cheaper nearby. But I'm worried about her mental and physical well-being. My girl is a mess right now. I recall being young and having no sense of the cost of things, and my mom really quickly made me get over it by stating point blank she wasn't going to pay for what I wanted. room and board away from home. I got over it quick when I learned it was not an option, even though I was upset at first. I'm thinking it may be best to just be blunt and tell her I'm not paying this. But I'm worried how she's doing mentally. But it feels so messed up that I would have to pay for private school to keep her mental health from collapsing. I didn't say to her that I would not do it. I simply said I didn't feel good about doing it, and that I think she should leave the school if she stops the current degree. Was I the for suggesting I don't want to pay for it? OP is not the AH for refusing to pay exorbitant fees for an unnecessary degree change. OP is prioritizing his financial practicality while offering reasonable alternatives to her daughter. OP's daughter's mental health is concerning, but OP has tried to support her. So, OP is not an AH for refusal. Let's now jump on to the next story from own-ad 5505. AITA for thinking he liked me? I, 29F, have worked at the same indoor pool for nearly 7 years. He has been a regular, longer than I have worked there. I am pretty sure he is in his 30s. We never had the chance for a chat until maybe 2 to 3 years ago. It was no personal chat, just him asking for a work-related favor. Shortly after this chat, my work schedule started changing, and we had more opportunities for greetings every time he arrived. They were just casual greetings with some work-related request every now and then. I didn't think much of it until one day his behavior changed a bit, and I started paying more attention to him. The day things changed was a day that I saw him come in, and when he said, "Hello," he got the biggest smile ever. I remember really liking that smile and hoping I would be able to see it again. However, no matter how I greeted him after that day, things just became awkward. He started greeting in a shyer way and barely got any words dash sound out, and just did this awkward wave with the hand that was holding his gym bag. On top of that, while he was exercising in the pool, it felt like he started taking more and more breaks at the end of the pool, which would be in sight of where I would be, near the cash registers. There even was this one time where he had to leave earlier than normal, and for some reason, he chose to put on his sweater, coat, and shoes all the way in the entrance, where again, he would be in sight of where I was working. Now I really wanted to make a funny comment or something that day, but I am very shy and often misunderstood person, so backed out of saying anything. Another case would be whenever I wasn't working and ended up swimming myself just before he would arrive. Maybe he would say hi, but again things were still awkward. However, it did seem like he would take his breaks on the side of the pool wherever I was taking mine. First, I thought it was just coincidence, but then I tried taking my break on the other end, and he would still pop up on my side of the pool without saying a word or starting a chat. Now I do know that he has no problem talking to people, because I have both seen and heard him talking to pretty much everyone but me. He even stopped asking his normal requests dash favors whenever I was working, and rather asked my colleagues. The only reason I know this is because these colleagues always, for some reason, double check with me if it is okay or whatever. Now the cherry on top that really made me think he liked me, and that started changing my feelings, happened last spring. I had been on sick leave for maybe 2 weeks, and I did not see him for maybe 3 weeks. The day I saw him again, I was standing at the cash register closets to the entrance whilst he came in. I said hello, but it got kind of awkward when I realized he didn't say a word back, just the shy wave. He did, however, keep eye contact all the way from the entrance door until he got around the corner. He also walked strangely close to glass window that I was standing behind whilst keeping his eye contact. And I mean really much closer than anyone else who doesn't need to come pay for a ticket. This made me look at the situation much more different, and right before the summer, I ended up taking a chance and left a note with his stuff saying that I think it would be fun to get to know each other. However, he ended up texting me back that he was really flattered, but that he was not on the market right now. This left me really confused, and for the entire summer it kind of kept hunting me on what his behavior meant. I ended up texting him one more time at the end of the summer. I'm not fully sure what I wrote anymore, but I remember thinking it could be seen as either a cute love letter or just simply pathetic. I do also think I mentioned the same occasion as above. He ended up apologizing for the misunderstanding and basically saying he was just trying to be polite by smiling and greeting, as he would towards everyone. Now my biggest confusion is that he neither time said anything about not being interested. I'm also aware that sharing this online can result in very unique responses, but I really want this mystery somewhat solved. So, what would your opinion be in a similar situation? And would a guy that is not interested really not write exactly those words? To me, it felt like he just gave excuses and that I really frightened him. He barely greets me now. One time I was standing in the same spot as where he kept the long eye contact, but I was looking at my phone when he came in. The second I looked up, he quickly turned his head. Other times, shit is just more awkward than before. Lastly, the reason I started falling for him, besides his cute smile, was mostly because I haven't met anyone in all my years working at a pool that loves swimming somewhat close as much as I do. He also seemed to maybe be a bit nerdy, which I am definitely, and I really think we could have been a good match. So, is it really so weird that I thought he liked me? Not that I am going to put myself out there anymore, but it is nice to know for other possible scenarios in the future. OP is not the AH, rather she misinterpreted her customer's friendliness as romantic interest. Her feelings were genuine, but his polite rejection and subsequent awkwardness suggest he wasn't interested. No problem, such misunderstandings often happen. You are not an AH for assuming something and clarifying it. Let's now jump onto the next story from OK_Badger3570. AITA for telling my friend's sister about her breakup plans out of concern for her mental health. This is going to be very long, so sorry in advance. I feel like this whole thing has gotten way out of control. I, 14F, have a friend who we'll call Leah, 15F, who is planning to break up with her boyfriend later this week. She has been wanting to break up with him for several months, but is only just now deciding to do something. For about a week, she was acting very strange and kept coming to me saying things like, "Something happened and I need to talk to you," but then never elaborating. I know that Leah has struggled with her mental health since she was very young, so her saying things like that, plus her odd behavior, really concerned me. She kept telling me that there was nothing to worry about, but she's also told me multiple times that she wouldn't share if she was struggling so as not to burden others. I didn't believe that she was really okay, so I went to her sister, who we'll call Allie, 17F. Allie and I are on a sports team at our school, so after practice one day, I just asked if Leah was doing all right, because she'd been acting very off, and I was concerned. Allie was very worried and said that Leah had been acting strange at home for a while now. She was so nervous to the point that she almost cried, and I assured her that I would let her know if I thought Leah was a danger to herself. A week later, Leah finally told me that she was planning to leave her boyfriend, and that was her big secret. I of course was relieved, and when Allie asked me about her sister again, I told her without even thinking about it. I didn't want her to be worried anymore, and I didn't think it was a big deal at the time, because I knew Allie wouldn't tell the boyfriend. A few days later, Allie sent me a TikTok that was about girls who make plans to leave their boyfriends and said that it sounded like Leah, which I never responded to. The next day, I get a text from Leah asking if I told her sister about her wanting to break up. I said yes, and that I was sorry for telling her secret, but that I didn't want to leave Allie in the dark after I accidentally scared her. Leah said that she didn't care what my intentions are, because the action was still hurtful, which fair enough. I apologized again, and asked if there was anything I could do to make it up to her, because we've been friends for a long time, and I don't want to lose that over this. She said that I really betrayed her trust, and I said, "I know I did, and I can't take that back, but I want to work to be better in the future, if you'll give me that chance." She didn't respond, so I sent one last paragraph basically saying that I was sorry, that I didn't mean to hurt her, and that I would give her space to figure out how she was feeling. The next day at school, she didn't talk to me like she normally did when I saw her in second period, which I expected because, like I said, I figured she would need space. When we got to lunch, she wouldn't even look at me, and I'm not exaggerating. I waved at her, and she turned around to start talking to another person. At the table, she looked at two of our friends, looked at me, and then told them that she needed to talk to them about something in the hall once they left. One of those friends later confirmed that she was telling them the whole thing. I didn't really mind that, because I understand that she might need to vent and figure out what to do. I did the same thing after I apologized, and vented to a friend about how bad I felt for what I did. When we got to fifth period, I had to take a test, but before I left to do so, she looked at another girl who was sitting at our table and said, "I need to talk to you about something once she leaves." This shocked me because I know Leah does not like this girl, and has complained multiple times about how she tells other people's business all the time and twists stories. Then, she pulled out her phone and showed the girl texts between her and a guy she's friends with who doesn't go to our school. The girl said, "Who's that about?" And Leah looked over at me, so I'm assuming it was about me. So, she's now told 4 people about this situation. I still wasn't upset, because like I said, I figured she needed to vent, and I don't really care what this girl says about me. I take my test and go to my next class. Halfway through, one of my friends texts me and says that Leah is telling everyone in her class, including the teacher, about what happened. She also apparently said that she knows I was faking when I said I never meant to hurt her. Which am I crazy to think that's her calling me a fake friend? To like 20 people? At this point, I was upset. I know I don't really have the right to be because I hurt her first, but I truly never meant to hurt her, and I only brought Allie into it at all out of a place of concern. I texted a friend, Maya, who already knew about the situation, had heard it from both me and Leah, so I figured she was the most unbiased person I could talk to, and asked what I should do. Maya told me that she thought Leah was blowing it way out of proportion, and that while I shouldn't have told Allie about the boyfriend thing, there was no reason for her to do all of this. I tried to approach Leah again and apologize, but she turned around and started talking to someone else like she couldn't hear me. All of this happened in the span of a day, and I feel literally sick to my stomach. I feel so bad for breaking Leah's trust, and I feel like I'm never going to get the chance to make it up to her. Plus, Maya is hosting a big Christmas party 4 days from now. It's a sleepover, and both me and Leah are coming. I asked Maya if she thought it would be better if I didn't come, or left before the sleepover started, so that I could still give the presents I bought. She said that if anyone should skip, it's Leah, but I don't think that would be fair. Like, I'm the one who started this disaster. I should have to put up with the consequences of it. I just don't want to ruin Leah's night or the party, so I think it would be better if I didn't go. Now all of our friends are picking sides, which isn't what I want at all. I'm not trying to turn people against Leah, but I think that's what she's going to see it as. Plus, there's people in my school who I don't even know who now think I'm an awful person, according to what my friends have overheard. I know I don't have the right to be offended or angry, but part of me feels like Leah is picking her anger over our friendship, and that really hurts me. I wouldn't even be mad about her telling people, even with everything she said. If she would just talk to me, then at least I would understand where she's at emotionally and could try to start making things better. Sorry if this is rambly. I'm just so confused right now. I know I shouldn't have told Allie, but do I really deserve this much backlash? I don't know what to do. AITA? OP isn't the AH for being concerned about Leah's mental health, but sharing her secret with Allie was a breach of trust. While well-intentioned, OP should have respected Leah's privacy, and the aftermath shows the consequences of that decision. So, I would rate OP 1 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump onto the next story from Substance Sweaty, 7969. AITA for pulling my friend's jacket? I, 21M, was visiting my friend Robert, 22M, over Thanksgiving. He goes to a college in a major city in the US, and I haven't been there in a while. I thought why not go visit one of my best friends from high school before I make it back to my family for the break. It started as a great trip. The second night, it took a bit of a turn for the worse. We went out that night, where me and our other friend Patrick, 22M, get drunk, but I definitely was much more drunk. Robert stayed sober. We were waiting outside a bar when Robert's friend, who we were supposed to meet, comes outside and says he is going home. Thereafter, we leave the line because we did not want to pay a cover, and I can kind of tell that my friend Robert is upset. Patrick is on the phone with a girl to see if there is something to do later in the night. It's about 1 a.m. Robert suddenly goes, "I'm waiting 1 minute, then I want to go home." I then panic and grab his jacket along the zipper, where it is unzipped, and go, "No, you can't." Then I start freaking out, saying he can't leave. Robert, controlled but angry, says I cannot grab his jacket, and I have no right to do that. I apologize, I think, but reiterate that he can't go home without us. I reminded him that you need a fob to get into the building, and there's a doorman. Not to mention it had been my first time in his apartment, and I was hammered. He says people open doors, we would be able to get in. He then turns around and says, "I'm going home, you guys can hang out." He then proceeds to start walking away. At this point, Patrick gets off the phone and starts walking with him. I learn later that Robert, instead of turning around to see if I was following, just kept asking Patrick if I am following. After eventually getting home, I ask if we can talk. He says yes. Once we get upstairs, we begin speaking where I, very drunkenly, apologized for grabbing his jacket, but also saying I was upset that he was icing me out. He keeps reiterating he can treat me any way he likes, that I most certainly have gotten to Robert's apartment with or without him, and that he would make sure we could get into the apartment. I become upset because he refused to apologize, started yelling, and his roommate might have been woken up. Eventually he says, "Let's just talk in the morning." Fast forward to the morning, Patrick leaves early, and I am sleeping on the couch, which has me looking directly at the front door. After waiting till 11 a.m., I go to the bathroom. When Robert hears that he slips out of the apartment to go hang out with other friends and get food, I text him at 12 p.m. asking to talk. He tells me he's out. I ask to get food, talk things over, and try to get back to a fun weekend. He keeps dodging the question and tells me that I have access to his fridge if I want food. I wanted to go out and eat considering I was visiting a city I hadn't been to in 10 years. Eventually he comes back at 1:30 p.m. We begin speaking from 1:30 to 2:20. I immediately apologized for my poor behavior, acknowledged it was wrong for me to grab his jacket, shout in his house. I admitted I got too drunk, and I thanked him for letting me stay at his apartment. I asked for an apology though because he was refusing to talk to me. He acknowledged my apology but refused to offer one of his own, stating that because I pulled his jacket, all his behavior was justified. I pressured him on this point for a while, then changed tactics to ask why he didn't even text me that he left. After enough prodding, he admitted that he was afraid for his physical safety and felt that because his roommate and Patrick left, he couldn't be alone with me in a space. He needed his roommate, who he has known for about 2 years now, to be nearby. At this, I asked why should I even be visiting? I then packed my stuff up, most of the clothes I own, and wandered around the city because it was too expensive for me to switch my train to an earlier time. Extra detail that is important: Robert is 6'5", 235 pounds. His roommate also stands at 6'4", probably around 200 pounds. I stand at 5'9", 150 pounds. Me and Robert have been some of each other's best friends for 15 years old. Robert has a tendency to go to bed early. That, along with the fact that when I arrived at 1 a.m. on Friday, and he was not in his apartment, didn't answer his phone, and it took him 30 minutes to get to the lobby when I arrived on the first night, I didn't trust him to actually let me into the apartment. I know Robert is a really good friend of mine, and I love him, but the way he treated me was not the way I treat anyone who I am that close with. It was like I didn't recognize him. I think that has me anxious to text him, because I am worried I will be met with the same stubborn person who refused to see my side and wanted to continue the conflict. I understand that I might have acted entitled, but I also did not expect this treatment, behavior, or the dynamic of host versus guest to be thrown in my face so aggressively. It was shocking, and I know I can be prideful, but I still like to think there is a certain level of decency you treat your best friends with even if you get into a fight. TLDR? I pulled my friend's jacket when really drunk and got upset when he began to ice me out and not talk to me. This continued through the next morning, which resulted in a fight of me leaving and wandering a major city with my suitcase for 3 hours. I'll try and answer any questions. OP is partially the AH for grabbing Robert's jacket while drunk, which was an invasion of his personal space. However, Robert's behavior was also excessive, avoiding communication and making OP feel unsafe. Both sides mishandled the situation, leading to conflict. So, as for scores, I would rate OP 1 out of 5 on the AH scale, and Robert 1.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump on to the next story from Caravagist with Wings. AITA for holding resentment towards a guy even after he said, sorry? So last month, I finally got tired of putting up with our campus dormitory and decided to move into an apartment near my university where the only occupants are students. The rooms for boys and girls are in separate buildings, but there is a common lounge connecting the two where both can hang out if they wanted. When I moved in, the girl, let's call her Jane, occupying the room in front of mine, welcomed me and chatted with me as I unpacked. As I set up my things, she noticed everything I own are in pairs, so I told her I have diagnosed OCD with suspected autism and that having everything in pairs makes me feel safe. She was so sweet about it, and we ended up chatting some more. Eventually, she told me she and some other occupants would often have a little get-together on Saturday nights at the common lounge, and told me I should attend this upcoming Saturday. I refused at first, and told her socializing is a nightmare for me, but in the end, she was able to convince me by saying I can just give it a try, and if I ended up not liking it, I can just retreat back to my room anytime. Come Saturday, Jane and I head down to the common lounge together. She said everyone pitches in by making food, but since I'm new, I could just join for now. When we got to the common lounge, there were already a few people there, and the first person I noticed was this very tall, very handsome guy helping set up the table. I could instantly tell that everyone in that room was conscious of how gorgeous he was, based on how they acted around him, even the guys. I couldn't help but be conscious of him as well, but to not embarrass myself, I just stuck to Jane's side. Things were going well for me at first. I just kept nodding silently at whoever was talking, until near the end of dinner when the alcohol started pouring. During this time, Jane had gone up to get something from her room, so I kind of felt alone on the table. They were talking about stereotypes in interracial dating, when one of the guys asked Mr. Tall and Handsome, let's call him Eric, what type of girls he thinks are the prettiest, and he said tall girls with tanned skin and prominent facial features. He worded it differently, but it's the best way I can describe what he meant. Now, as a girl who had unfortunately developed a bit of a crush on the guy, I couldn't help but be disappointed that I was the exact opposite of his type. I knew I was being silly, so I shook the feeling off and distracted myself by picking out some food to continue eating, when suddenly, Eric commented out of the blue, "You've only been eating the nachos, do you not like the food?" The moment everyone in the table turned to look at me, my blood ran cold. I didn't want to explain my picky eating habits due to my condition. It's common for people on the spectrum to be picky eaters due to anxiety and sensory issues, to a table full of people I just met, so I told him I'm not that hungry, and nachos are my favorite. I know, I should have come up with a better excuse, but when you're in the situation, panicking, it's hard to articulate. I thought he'd just nod and let it go, but one of the girls pouted and said she and her friends did their best to make the food. They thought everyone would enjoy it. People started comforting her, telling her it's good, and I felt so bad for her that I was ready to explain myself. Until I met Eric's eyes again and found him looking at me with obvious disdain. He was frowning at me with something close to disgust before turning to the girl and saying, "Food's great, it's not your fault." It sounded so wrong in my ears that my defenses went up. It's not her fault. So that means it's mine? Now I wanted to defend myself instead of explaining myself. I felt so awful I wanted to leave the table. My little crush on Eric just got snipped in the bud. Jane then came back. But after a few minutes, I excused myself with the pretense of going to the bathroom, when I actually went up to my room and cried myself to sleep out of anger. The next day, Jane knocked on my door and told me she wanted to share some noodles with me. I was glad she didn't bring up the fact that I just disappeared last night, so I agreed, and we went down to the little terrace connected to the common lounge to eat. When we got there, Eric and one of his guy friends were there. I could feel the tension in the air as we passed by them, so I kept my head down. But to my horror, Eric called out to me, so I had no choice but to stop. His face was serious as he said something along the lines of, "Hey, sorry about last night. I called you out for only eating nachos without considering your reason. It was rude of me, I'm sorry." I told him it was okay, waving my hand and all. As I sat down with Jane on the terrace table, Eric tried to make small talk with us. I let Jane do the talking because I still felt uncomfortable, but Eric and his friend kept purposely including me in the conversation. When Jane and I finished and headed up to our rooms, I asked her what could have possibly prompted Eric to apologize. That's when she looked at me all sheepishly and told me that last night, after I didn't come back after leaving the table, the girl who cooked most of the food brought up the incident. Remember that Jane wasn't there when Eric called me up, so she asked what the girl was talking about. When they told her, she got mad and said, "She literally has OCD. It's quite common for them to be picky about the food they eat. It's not something they can just control." Jane said they all changed their tune after that, and she also apologized for telling people about my OCD without my permission. I forgave her, of course, but I find it hard to act friendly with Eric even after he apologized. I know it was also my fault, because I could have just explained, but is it wrong for me to think that people shouldn't comment on the eating habits of someone they just met? I tried not to run into Eric, but today he saw me by the vending machines near the apartment gates and tried making small talk again. I know he already said sorry, but I can't seem to be warm towards him. I keep thinking about how awful I felt when he called me out. I hate being an I feel like I'm being mean and I don't like it. Does anyone know how to get over such resentment quickly? TLDR. A guy calls me out for being a picky eater at a get-together, but I had trouble explaining myself. He apologizes the next day, but I find it hard to act friendly with him. What do I do to get over this? OP isn't an AH. Eric was rude and inconsiderate, and although he apologized, OP's discomfort is understandable. It's not wrong to feel resentment after being publicly embarrassed, especially when the apology didn't immediately resolve the emotional impact. AITA for not letting my fiancé play dad to his nephew, who's his biological son from sperm donation. I don't know if this is the right sub for this, but I need advice because my engagement is literally hanging in the balance right now. My fiancé donated sperm to his brother and his now ex-wife because they were having issues conceiving naturally. The wife was checked by multiple doctors, but his brother refused to get checked because he didn't want people to think he was less of a man, so he roped my fiancé into secretly donating sperm. I wasn't comfortable with the idea, but my fiancé comes from a close-knit family, so I knew I wouldn't be able to convince him not to help his brother, so I didn't even try. His brother was supposed to raise the child as his own, but he couldn't cope with the fact that the baby wasn't biologically his, so he divorced his wife before she even gave birth. Ever since my fiancé has been supporting her financially because his brother left her with nothing, and she doesn't work. To an extent, I was okay with this, because she's probably the biggest victim in all of this, and my fiancé's brother is a huge jackass for putting her in this situation. But it did make me uncomfortable when he was buying her gifts to cheer her up, or going to doctor appointments with her. She's since given birth, and now my fiancé has decided he'll raise the baby with her, because he doesn't want the child to grow up fatherless. Also, a big reason I think he wants to raise the baby is because his brother has made it seem like she was unfaithful to his family, so they're questioning whether the baby is a part of their family or not, and my fiancé doesn't want his nephew to be shunned. I'm completely against this because it was bad enough that I had to accept another woman birthing his child before me, but I don't want to be a stepmother. The agreement was that my fiancé would be only an uncle to the baby, which is something I can cope with. Anything more is too much. I know this isn't an easy situation for the ex, and I sympathize with her, but this isn't my problem. She shouldn't have let her husband push her into something she wasn't comfortable with, and my fiancé has already done more than enough for her. AITA? OP is the AH for her discomfort with her fiancé playing dad to his nephew, but she is disregarding her fiancé's deep emotional connection to the child and his desire to support his nephew, which cannot be justified. For this, I would rate OP 0.1 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump on to the next story, from Mars Goo, 2020, AITA. If I set boundaries with my mother and threaten to cut her out of my life if she doesn't respect them. I, 24 transgender male, have always had issues with communicating with my mom, and it was alright in high school, and everything but lately, unresolved feelings have come to the surface. To get an idea of everything, I grew up with divorced parents, and my mom had my brother, 30M, with someone else 6 years before she had me. For a majority of my childhood, despite her getting remarried when I was 3, it was just me, mom, and my brother in the house. The man she was with was a recovering alcoholic, and he would take his anger out on us by yelling and emotionally abusing us. Well, when I was 12 and my brother was 18, they divorced, and my brother enlisted in the Air Force. So, I went from being the youngest to the only child. During the time they were getting a divorce, that was really the only time I really had my mother's undivided attention. It was the only time I felt that she really paid attention to me and cared about how I was feeling. When I was 14, she got together with my stepdad, who had 3 kids that were still in school and all younger than me. And when their mom had a mental break, they came and lived with us. All of a sudden, I was the oldest sibling, with the responsibility of looking out for my younger siblings, and I was just starting high school. To make matters worse, the following year, my grandmother was diagnosed with stage 4 lung bone cancer. I did what I could to help with my siblings and support my mom emotionally, but it feels like she never really saw a lot of what I did. That Christmas, even though I had asked for a tablet or something to do my artwork that I do, we all got a Wii U, because my younger brothers expressed interest in games that were coming out for the system. I ended up still getting sketchbooks and canvases to do art, But the boys really got what they wanted, and my younger sister ended up getting a ukulele that she never really learned how to play. That year for my birthday was spent in the hospital with my dying grandmother, who passed away only a few short weeks later. The next year I had asked for similar things and a few games for the Xbox my dad had handed down to me when he'd gotten a new one. I got one of the games from Santa, but not the drawing tablet. My little brothers ended up getting a Nintendo Switch that year. This continued for the next few years, with my mom and stepdad giving me and two of the younger siblings a 3 Decicans due to one of the boys already having one, and I got none of what was really on my list. My 18th birthday, the only thing I got a 6-pack of snack cupcakes and a small emoji balloon on a stick. I had even had an ROTC competition on my birthday, and they didn't even show up to watch me compete because one of my siblings had something going on. My grandmother, on my father's side, and my grandfather let me take a few friends out to dinner that night. I'd moved out of our 2-bedroom apartment when I was 16 because there were 6 of us, and I, still presenting as female at the time, was sharing a room with my younger brother, who was only 3 years younger than me. Around 2 months before graduating from high school, my mom asked me what I wanted for a graduation present, and I told her that all I wanted was to go on a trip with her. I didn't care where or what we did. I just wanted a vacation with just my mom, and no worries about our personal lives. I graduated nearly 7 years ago now, and have yet to go on a trip with her. After I graduated, I went to an acting showcase and got a scholarship to acting school. I had been active in theater in high school and was constantly told I wasn't good enough, so this was a big thing. Every time I brought it up, it didn't seem like my mom believed I could actually make it through the school and get a degree. I did, but it was rough. Before going to school, I was in a world premiere musical in my hometown about a historical event in the town, and while they had to take care of my stepdad's parents, who were going through medical issues at the time, it still hurt to see them at a gas station, and I reminded her of the show, and she flat out told me that she had forgotten about it, despite me posting on Facebook about it for weeks beforehand. Shortly before leaving for school, I had a bad depressive episode, and nearly myself, thinking that I was just going to constantly be in the background with people I cared about. I went through a partial hospitalization program that helped me come up with coping skills for my mental health that I've used to this day, because I was still on my mom's health insurance. She got the bill for it when I was in New York and called me about it. I told her just bits and pieces because I was ashamed, and she only ended up yelling at me, and because I still felt that she didn't really care about me, I limited contact with her then, and only focused on getting through school. On my 20th birthday, I sat in my kitchen in my college apartment with my roommate cooking behind me while I was on the phone with her, and listened to her yell at me about not communicating for an hour and a half, which ended with me in tears. I somehow made it through acting school during COVID and everything, and came out as transgender between the 2 school years. When I told her, she said she still loved me, and she constantly still tries to use the right pronouns and my name. But it's hard for her. I don't get upset because both her and my stepdad are constantly trying. This last year, I thought we were getting better with our relationship, especially when my grandfather on her side was diagnosed with gastroesophageal cancer and nearly died from a routine operation. We communicated and helped each other through it, and everything seemed fine. I ended up with some health problems from work, and due to the runaround I got from them, I ended up quitting my job. Recently, a new game came out that doesn't work on my Xbox One, and I asked for help from both her and my father to try and get a PS5 so I could play games with my friends in my free time and relax, especially with me in training to be an EMT with the goal of eventually being a paramedic. I need things to do with everything I am going to experience. Well, I experienced a bad call on a ride along this past weekend and called my mom for advice on how to adjust to it since she's a nurse. During the call, she flat out told me she was done getting game systems for us kids, so I shouldn't even bother asking her for it. And the only kid that's getting one is my youngest brother, because that's what he asked for as a graduation present. I don't want to have to cut my mom out of my life. I really don't. She's the only parent who's always been in my life consistently, because my father couldn't handle being a good dad to me and my 2 oldest brothers from him, but he's at least come back and tried to make up for everything. I just feel like my mom never listens to me and has constantly pushed me to the side to worry about the other kids, because I never really had problems in school or when I was younger. I plan to sit down with her and set boundaries with her that my current roommate told me I should do and explain to her my feelings. The only problem is, is that when I do bring this stuff up to her, she either shuts down and starts yelling, or she just denies everything and gaslights me. And I know that if I set these boundaries, she'll send everyone my way to try and get me to see reason and lift these boundaries, which will only give me one option, and that is to cut her out completely. But that would also mean cutting out people important to me and risk a relationship with my brother's kids. So, AITA, if I do this? OP is not the AH for setting boundaries with her mom. In fact, it is a healthy step, especially when the parent repeatedly dismisses her feelings and needs. OP has endured years of emotional neglect, and it's understandable to demand respect in their relationships. If boundaries lead to distance, it's unfortunate but necessary for OP's well-being. So, OP is not an AH, and I would rate her 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. As for OP's mom, she is an AH for her behavior towards OP. So, I would rate OP's mom 3.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump on to the next story from HMR 131. AITA for wanting to leave my boyfriend because he has 0 nurturing qualities? I, 24F, come from a family of medical professionals, so nurturing and care are hardwired into me. My 28M boyfriend comes from a very rural family of country folk, to put it lightly, where injury or illness was basically ignored or not taken seriously, and everyone was pretty much told to suck it up or rub some dirt in it. We've been together for almost 4 years. To preface, I have never expected to be taken care of and rarely ask for help unless I physically cannot do something on my own. I suffer from many debilitating chronic illnesses that affect my mobility, and my mother's side of the family has a rare gene expression that results in pretty much all of us getting some form of cancer at some point. My chronic illnesses, POTS and EDS, result in me either passing out or almost passing out frequently, and my joints dislocate often just from walking, getting out of bed, standing up, lifting, etc. He was so caring the first few months of our relationship and seemed so concerned every time I had a flare-up, but that soon turned to me rarely asking for help, because I could tell he was bothered by my helplessness at times. In 2023, I was diagnosed with brain cancer and had brain surgery in November of that year to remove the tumor, but unfortunately, it left me completely blind on the right side and left the right side of my body very weak due to the tumor's location. My boyfriend stayed with me in the hospital while I was in the ICU recovering, but showed virtually no emotion towards any of the complications. I lived with him at the time, so he knew he'd be my primary caretaker following surgery, and his work was next door to our house, so his boss said he could take as many breaks as needed to check in or help me without any effect on his pay. My orders were minimal standing and absolutely no lifting for 2 weeks, and as much rest as I could get. After 3 days, he seemed completely bothered any time I needed help. If I forgot something in another room and had already laid back down, he would huff and puff about having to grab something for me. It got to the point where I ignored doctor's orders and was doing almost everything myself because seeing him annoyed by helping me broke my heart. Meanwhile, I was also adjusting to being newly half-blind and coping with the loss of my future career. I was in veterinary school and couldn't complete the graduation lab requirements with low vision. I actually brought it up to him a few weeks later, and he got better. Afterwards, the depression and grief of what had happened to me set in, and I admittedly became very depressed and wasn't taking very good care of myself, or picking up after myself, as all I wanted to do was lay in bed. I was mourning an entire life I had dreamed for myself, and mental health care is hard to come by where we lived. He confronted me about all of this, and word for word said, "It's been 2 weeks. You need to get over it." We had a big argument, and he apologized a few days later. I gave him the benefit of the doubt, as I knew it had to be hard on him too, since he never expected to become my caretaker and sole breadwinner for the foreseeable future, so suddenly and so soon. Especially when he had never really been nurtured growing up since his parents were so rough around the edges and had a very pull yourself up by the bootstraps type of mentality. Eventually, I found a temporary tech job I could do from home, and I ironically ended up pulling myself up by my bootstraps and got back into a good daily routine as not to burden him with my depression. I ended up moving in with my parents again so that they could help out with my care and driving me around since I can't do so anymore with my vision loss. Well, here we are a year later, and I just had a tubal ligation 6 days ago after deciding there was no way I was passing cancer and a slew of other illnesses down to children. This was a very difficult decision. With my chronic condition, I don't heal well, and the surgery resulted in unexpected complications and severe pain. He couldn't come over until the weekend because of his new work schedule, but he spent the weekend here with me, and once again, I felt zero empathy from him. I'm not allowed to lift, and I'm still in a ton of pain, and every asked favor felt like pulling teeth. I even almost fainted at one point and vomited, and when I came out of the bathroom, he didn't react. No, "Are you okay? Or can I get you anything?" I was miffed at that point and said, "Can you please move so I can sit down and not pass out?" Since he was taking up the bed, and he asked me why I was suddenly being such a brat. So, I laid out how I was feeling, and he responded by saying how I love to point out when he's not doing something right. This was because I brought up how he treated me after last year's procedure. I love him so much, but I don't think he'll ever be someone I can lean on for support, considering my chronic illnesses will lead to more medical complications in the future, and I'm considering leaving. It breaks my heart having to consider this at this time of year. We've had lots of up and downs in our relationship, but this is what is weighing on me the most heavily right now. So, AITA and reading too much into his lack of care, or am I justified in my feelings? OP is not the AH for leaving her boyfriend because her chronic health issues require emotional and physical support, which her boyfriend consistently fails to provide. Her feelings of neglect are valid, especially considering the lack of empathy during major surgeries and ongoing struggles. Let's now jump onto the next story from Blue_for you. AITA for not spending time with my BF's family? I 26F and my boyfriend 30M have been dating for a year and a couple months now. We met on a dating app and hit it off on the first date. We made things official after a few dates, and I genuinely love this man. He's invited me on trips with his family, convinced me to quit my miserable full-time job and go back to college, and encouraged me to seek mental help. Another thing I should mention is he's helped me out on multiple occasions with bills after I quit my full-time job. I genuinely love this man and want to spend the rest of my life with him. The only issue is his parents, specifically his mother. So, a little background about myself before I get to the part about my boyfriend's parents. I've never been good with money. While yes, I was working a full-time job, I didn't save much money, but I wasn't falling short on bills and never missed credit card payments and my stock investment. My parents created a savings account for me when I was young and put money in it so I'd have it for college, but I never touched it until my boyfriend convinced me to go back to college to get my degree. On to the parents. So, I've always enjoyed spending time with my BF's parents. They've been good to me and always went out of their way to make me feel welcomed. Sure, we've had our issues, but other than that, I thought everything was okay. I'll start with the first incident I've had with his mom. His parents own a lake house in another state, and they usually take 2-week trips for the summer there. My BF had convinced me to quit my full-time job and apply for the fall semester and to come with them on their trip. He told me to quit on the spot, but I wanted to maintain a good relationship with my ex-job and put my 2 weeks in and missed the first week of my BF and his family's trip. My BF offered to fly me into the state and pick me up from the airport, so I agreed. He paid for my flight and Ubered to the airport, and I eventually made it to the house with him. Things were going well, although I wasn't making much conversation with his family. I'm not trying to make excuses, but I hadn't been dating my boyfriend for very long when this trip happened, so I didn't know his parents very well, and this was the first time I had met his aunt and uncle. I have bad anxiety, which my boyfriend knows about, and was taking a new medication at the time. Another thing about my boyfriend is he's a huge pothead. He takes bong rips consistently throughout the day, and he was smoking on the trip, and I asked if I could have one of the edibles he brought with him. He said yes, and I only ate half of it. I've taken edibles before and have smoked weed multiple times in the past, and didn't think my reaction would be bad, but it was. I'm going to be honest, I don't remember much from that day, but I ended up passing out and missing an important dinner with his whole family, and my boyfriend expressed how his family was wondering where I was the whole time. I apologized and said I've never had a reaction like that, and I thought everything was fine after that. The next day, my boyfriend came to me, and we had a sit-down, and he told me he was having doubts about our relationship because I wasn't spending enough time with his family on the trip, and I had missed an important dinner. I apologized, but also won't lie and say I didn't make excuses for myself. I told him about my anxiety, the new medication I was taking, and that I've taken edibles before, and this reaction was new to me. I told him I'd put my effort into spending time with his family, and I kept true to my word. For the rest of the trip, I pushed myself to spend time with his family. A little background about my BF's aunt and uncle. They're both extremely conservative, anti-vax and anti-mental health. I've heard the uncle straight up say, "Chinese people are scum," which is absolutely disgusting to say. Regardless, I tried to bond with everyone and keep the peace. Eventually, the trip ended, and my boyfriend seemed happy with how things ended up. The second incident I had was with his mother and the family dog. My BF and his family used to have a dog, and he would always get into the garbage, so they usually keep it in a cabinet and keep a little step stool in front of the cabinet door to stop the dog from getting into the trash. At one point, I'd used the garbage and noticed the ladder wasn't there. I looked for it, but couldn't find it, so I assumed someone was using it and left it at that. His mom is kind short, so I guess in my mind it made sense that she might be using it because I've seen her use it before to reach things on top shelves. Well, the dog got into the garbage, and my BF's mom was pissed. I apologized and explained that the ladder wasn't there while I was using the garbage, and that I tried to look for it, but she wouldn't even look at me or speak to me. My BF and I went downstairs, and I started crying because I thought I'd ruined things with my BF's mom. My boyfriend tried to calm me down, but in the end, I just left. His mother sent me a text saying she wasn't mad at me, but her behavior during the situation made me think otherwise. Regardless, I decided to let the whole thing go, and when I saw her next time, we both pretended like nothing happened. The third instance was fairly recently. It was my BF's sister's birthday, and I came over. I wished his sister happy birthday and spoke to her for a bit, and then went downstairs to my boyfriend's room to hang out with him. His parents ordered pizza for the party, and we all came upstairs to eat. There were a lot of people there. IMO. It was my BF's parents, my BF, me, the sister, and the sister's boyfriend. They were all talking and making conversation, and I tried to join in as much as I could. I guess at some point, the noise of the conversation and kitchen overwhelmed me, and I just stared off into space for a bit. For reference, I struggle with noise. I've been working with doctors to figure out why this is, and I've been told by multiple doctors that I may have autism. It's gotten so bad that I sometimes wear headphones to block out the noise, and my boyfriend knows this. Anyways, the dinner ends and I head downstairs to do homework. It's final season, and I wanted to study and do some homework in my BF's room downstairs in the basement. At one point, while I was studying, my boyfriend asked me if I wanted some cake, and I said yes, and offered to come upstairs to grab it with him, but he insisted I focus on my homework. Eventually, he brings down the cake, and I think everything is okay. A couple days after the party, my boyfriend and I are talking, and he mentions how his mom thought I was rude for not coming upstairs to sing happy birthday to the sister. I was confused, and brought up that I offered to come up with him to grab the cake, and also mentioned that his mother has my number, and could have sent me a text asking me to come upstairs to sing happy birthday. We went back and forth, not in an argument, but a discussion, and I eventually let things go. But I'm going to be honest, it kind of hurt to hear that she thought I was being rude. After all of these instances, and a couple more, I recently started making excuses to not drive over to his house because I know I'll have to speak with his mom. I feel like I have to walk on eggshells around her, so I just stopped coming over to their house. Last night, my BF noticed something was wrong, and I confessed to him that I was avoiding his family because of his mom's past behavior. My BF said that his family feels the same way about me because my mood is always up or down. While I do have bipolar disorder, I've always made an effort to put on a smile for his family. The second I come over to their house, I always check the living room to say hi to them because his mom and dad are usually there, and I have a nice conversation with them before going down to my BF's room. Another thing my boyfriend brought up was that his parents are concerned with him giving me money to pay my bills. It's something I'm very embarrassed about, and I've told him to save his money multiple times, and he gives it to me anyways. I work 2 jobs, and go to college full-time, and try to pick up shifts as much as I can without making my grades slip. I've been searching for jobs for months, and haven't had much luck, and I've been very vocal about it with both my boyfriend and his parents. My BF suggested going door to door to different jobs, and I did, and every place I went in person told me to apply online, or they gave me a pamphlet with a QR code to scan to apply. My BF said his parents are concerned that I'm going to grow up and marry their son, and mainly rely on his income. To me, that doesn't make sense. I'm currently in college full-time to hopefully get a degree. I've been very vocal about getting my master's to his parents to do my dream job, and it hurt that they viewed me as a leech in his life. I tried to defend myself and see things from my BF's point of view, but I told him I needed space from him and his family, and we haven't spoken since last night. Please tell me if I'm in the wrong. I love this man and I want to be with him so badly, but I don't know what to do. I also wanted to mention a couple of other things that have happened between me and his family. I used to joke to my boyfriend that we should get married on the spot, and his mom went behind my back and asked him about it. He explained to her that it was just a joke, but she expressed concern because neither of us are financially stable. My boyfriend asked me to stop making these jokes around his mom, and I agreed to. Another thing that happened was about my mental health. I've always struggled with it, and at one point I told my boyfriend I planned to end my life after our 1 year, and he was upset about it. He wanted to take me to the hospital, but I convinced him to take me after our 1-year celebration, and he did. After our 1 year, my mental health continued to decline, and he ended up driving me to the hospital, which I appreciated, but he brought his mom with him because he couldn't handle this alone. I understand that it's upsetting to see your partner so low, but after everything that has happened between me and his mom, I didn't want her there to see me at my lowest, but my boyfriend convinced me to let her come. I also want to note that my boyfriend has never paid for anything college-related. I relied mainly on my savings account and financial aid. I really want to know if my thoughts and feelings are justified, and if my relationship is saved able. So, am I the AH? OP is not the AH. She's navigating her own mental health challenges and anxiety, and while her boyfriend's family has valid concerns, her discomfort around them is understandable. However, avoiding communication and not addressing issues directly with them is problematic. No scores, just encouragement to communicate and resolve issues directly. AITA for reneging on letting someone live with me because they said they won't sleep with me? I'm 29M, she is 28F. We've been platonic friends since university a few years ago. We're not super close friends but have hung out on occasion, although we used to hang out a lot more on campus. She has fallen under financial duress, and I offered to let her live in my spare room while she gets her bearing. This was a month or so in planning, and she was due to move in the second week of February. We were talking more about our situation going forward, and she said an off-the-cuff remark, "Just be aware I will not be sleeping with you." Just out of the blind. We don't have that type of relationship, nor do I want it to progress to that. I don't even joke flirt with her, or put innuendos in my speech. So this took me by surprise. She had an assumption I had an ulterior motive. I told her as much, and said that comment make me think of our friendship in a different, negative way, and I have to think a bit more about our arrangements. I said as much to be polite, but what I want is more time to articulate a way to back out. She said it was just a standard rule that she'd tell to any roommates. I am not a woman, so I don't know if this is how it is, but it seemed really condescending. AITA here? Sorry, I am ESL, so if my grammar is bad, my mistake. OP isn't necessarily the AH, but his reaction could have been more understanding. Her comment may have been a boundary-setting remark, not an implication of interest. Reneging on the offer based on that assumption seems unfair. Let's now jump onto the next story from Butter Tarts and Darts. AITA for ruining Christmas for my in-laws and blowing up their relationship with my husband, because I told the truth, possibly from ego. In summer we were speaking with my mother-in-law and father-in-law, husband's stepdad. Christmas came up, and they were vocal in their sadness we've never spent a Christmas together. We have 3 kids, 2 dogs, 1 cat, and we live in a different province. Where we live, my mother-in-law has a dozen other family members, and where they live, it's just them, and sister-in-law, 17F, half-sibling to H. Both areas have extreme and unpredictable winter weather, and it's about a 19 hours drive each way between us. We all drive to see each other in the good weather months, but we don't drive further than a couple of hours away in winter. Instead of paying for the 5 of us to fly to see them at Christmas, and paying to kennel the dog's dash cat or get a sitter, I offered to pay for the 3 of them to fly here to stay with us because it's cheaper, it's easier, flying with 1 teen versus 3 young kids, and they'd also get to see the other pockets of family who live here. They were really happy, and I told them to look into their schedules, book time off, and let me know the dates they wanted to travel. I've been reminding them I need dates for months. They both work shift work, which is sometimes opposing, so they don't always share the same days off. And sister-in-law has school. I reminded them each time that I'm not booking this until they give me the specific dates they plan on traveling. My last reminder was the last week of November, where I told mother-in-law on a phone call that the flights were booking up. It's a small town, and there aren't many flights to start with. I need them to solidify their plans, book the days off, and let me know. I told her this will be the last time I ask for the dates, and I'll wait for them to get back in touch when they have them. Then I mentally washed my hands of them. She called me on the 15th of December with their dates, and I went online with her on the phone so we could book it. Flights are booked up. I opened the option of them coming in the new year and having a late makeshift Christmas, and she said, "It's not the same though." I just said, "That's a shame," and we ended the call. Now, I know I'm not the AH for any of this, but possibly for the fallout. Yesterday I ran into H's cousin, who was talking about how shitty it is that the flights didn't work out for my in-laws. I agreed, but mentioned how annoying it is to listen to them complain about missing Christmas with us when all they had to do was provide dates. Well, apparently, the in-laws have been telling the family that this was my fault, that I dropped the ball, and now they're going to be home alone, again. So, I let him know that this has been in the works since June, that I hounded them for weeks, reminded them at every turn that I was willing to pay for everything, and all they had to do was give me dates for their stay travel. They resisted, and we tried to book the minute they finally gave them to us. The cousin told his parents what I said. He's not the AH, I'd do the same. His mom told her sister, MIL. Mother-in-law called H and was yelling at him about how I ruined their Christmas and was talking. H told his mom he never wanted to spend Christmas with them anyway, and this all worked out perfectly, that they should be kissing the ground I walk on for being the only reason they got to see their grandkids, that the only reason they have a relationship with us is because I've facilitated it, that I have overcompensated for their shortcomings to ensure it, that I was trying to give them a nice big family Christmas because I have a loving and generous heart, and they shit all over it with their ineptitude. Then, I wasn't even surprised. You're as useless as a paper hammer. And he hung up on her. The whole family is up in arms between the flights-Christmas, me telling the truth, and then H telling the truth. H was no contact with his mom when we met, the result of a traumatic childhood with a lot of neglect and abuse. They forged a new relationship after we got married. She seemed to have changed, is a good mom to SEL, stable marriage. But he has always kept her at arm's length, minimal effort, uninvested. I'm usually the one making calls, sending cards-gifts, planning trips to see them. He's been happy for the kids to have that relationship. She's been a better nana than she was a mother, but knows they will never be close. He was happy to keep the new status quo. Her biggest issue through this new relationship has been her flakiness. This issue with making plans-committing is very normal for her and has been frustrating for us. H thinks it's because she really just deep down still doesn't care, and posited that her refusal to give dates was because she never actually wanted to come, so she sabotaged it. He is now totally done with her. We all are, by extension. So, AITA for my impulsivity and annoyance, maybe a little ego, which led me to tell the truth to the wrong person, making me the catalyst for an entire familial implosion? Should I have just taken it on the chin and removed my feelings from the situation? I feel really bad. H has been brought right back to those feelings he worked so hard to work through. He seems somewhat relieved to be done, despite never previously expressing any regret over reconnecting, fully in, but emotionally removed from her. But I can tell it's awoken that sadness he carried for a long time. ETA. I can understand from my post why people would assume I was the driving force behind the reconnection, but I was not. He has wanted a relationship with SEL since she was born, and she was the only reason he decided to reach out and try to forge a relationship with mother-in-law, father-in-law. Because she is a minor, we needed the relationship for access. I do not care about mother-in-law, unless you count my disdain. I did not push or chase a relationship with her. He has done all the counseling and therapy to deal with his childhood, the pain, the resentment, the anger. He does not have a relationship with his bio-dad, his main abuser, where most of his trauma lies. I have done the work and made the effort so that he can have a relationship with his sister while not having to deal with mother-in-law more than absolutely necessary. I have just been the middleman dash interference to diminish his interactions with MIL to a level he found palatable dash tolerable so that he can maintain contact with SIL and have things be amicable and easy. I am completely and totally fine with his decision to pull the plug. It's much less work and effort for me. He is heartbroken that it appears his relationship with his sister is over for now, because I set this in motion. She is very angry and refuses to speak to either of us. I feel like an asshole for speaking before thinking, and not realizing that this would be the death blow. There have been many conversations between us about all of this over the years, many check-ins regarding his comfortability. Some have said I am abusing my husband, or letting him be abused. He would laugh his off at that. I have done all of this so that he could have SIL in his life, not because I gaff about mother-in-law or her feelings. I have heard all the stories from his childhood, and have zero affection or respect for his mother. This is not a loss for me. He tolerated her to be closer to his sister during the years a relationship foundation is built. The fallout at this point is sister-in-law has refused contact. The aunt and cousin, and their attachments, mentioned previously, have decided they are not comfortable coming to our Christmas Eve event and have disinvited us from their Christmas Day dinner. We will see who else bails for Christmas evening. OP is an AH here because her impulsive honesty and frustration led to unnecessary fallout. While OP's feelings are valid, the situation could have been handled more tactfully to avoid igniting a family conflict, especially her husband's cutting ties with his parents. As for scores, I would rate OP 2 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump onto the next story from Jane Goat 345. AITA for not getting Christmas presents for my sister's boyfriend's kids, who I have met in passing twice. I, 35F, live in a different state than sister, 37. Within the year, she got a new boyfriend, moved in a couple months later to his home with her 3 girls, 12, 10, 6, and his 3 boys, 18, 14, 9. Me, my husband, and our 2 kids, 9, 6, visit our hometown often where both our families live, including my sister. We have been there 4 times this year, so 4 weeks, and we have met the boyfriend twice, so like maybe 4 hours total probably. Only his 9-year-old came the first evening for like 10 minutes, and then his dad had to take him somewhere and he left. So that was brief, and it was a very quick "this is so-and-so, so that kid definitely doesn't know me or my husband." Then one other time this year, my sister and her 3 girls and his 14-year-old and 9-year-old met me and my kids at a park for like 30 minutes, where the kids played and my sister and I sat on a bench. That is the extent of the relationship with those 2, which is none at all. 14-year-old once at that park with no more than a hello. 9-year-old with maybe a hello twice. I'm barely acquainted to them. Never met the oldest. We've invited her BF, and all the kids to spend time with us this summer at our house that has lots of land and places for them to all fit, and they said they would, then bailed because it's too tight a fit to drive with kids and dogs. Yet they made a different trip doing just that not long after. My sister has never made a huge effort in seeing us at our house 2 or 3 times many years ago. We've lived here 7 years. That being said, I'm close to my sister, and we talk on FaceTime weekly. My kids are super close to her kids, their cousins. So now the question, we drive every year a day or 2 after Christmas and spend a week there. I buy presents for the cousins, and the last year or 2 have been doing a tradition of only buying a book for every niece-nephew, instead of a bunch of individual random gifts, 4 kids on my husband's side to buy for also. We might see the boyfriend's kids at 1 2 to 3 hour dinner at my parents' house over the entire week we will be there. So, is it necessary for me to buy those kids something too? Even the 18-year-old one I've never met, who definitely won't go to the dinner? Like if I buy them, I've got to do all 3, not leave one out. But that one is a whole adult that I've never met. My sister is pushing the whole, "Oh, your step-cousins blah blah blah," to my kids when talking about them. But like, my kids don't know them. I don't know them just because you live with them now, for not even a whole year, doesn't make them my family now. Or does it? I don't know. They aren't married, not that it matters, but it's not like they have been together for years and are long-term partners who we have a relationship with. Like, if her boyfriend was in charge of buying gifts, he wouldn't think twice about my kids. He doesn't know them. What do I do? My husband was like, "No, I'm not buying them anything. There is no relationship there, and I wouldn't be able to pick them out of a lineup." I know people will be like, "Just buy the books." But dude, Books are at least 20 USD, so that's over 60 USD in this economy, LOL, on top of all the other billion gifts we have to do for everyone else. They won't be opening them all together or anything. My kids will most likely see my sister's kids a day or two before this dinner. She usually drops them off at my parents' house to play with my kids. So, I can give the girls their books and be done with it that day. But I have a feeling my sister will be mad about me not buying one for everyone. Help! The stubborn person in me is like, no, sister. If you want there to be a relationship there, we have given so many chances for there to be one, yet there is none there. There has to be some accountability for not making an effort on my sister and her boyfriend's part. We are rando people to those kids. Will she have a right to be mad? Do I have a right to not spend money where I don't need to? What should I do? Edit to add. Honestly, I didn't even think of buying them gifts until my mom was complaining to me today that she was torn on possibly having to spend an extra 300 USD plus on these kids because she gives 100 USD each to her 5 grandkids, so 500 USD, and now might have to do 800 USD and wasn't going to change her plans on stockings and 100 USD bill for kids. She has met the oldest once, I think. Met the younger kids a small handful of times over the entire year. They live 10 minutes from their house. My sister just bails on my parents, and they always ditch them for other plans with their rich friends. Also, for the first time in months, my sister dropped her 3 girls at my parents' house the other week, and they came home with stuff she had given them, like a grandmother does. And the 9-year-old lost his mind and had a huge tantrum. So my sister told my mom she can't give her girls anything anymore unless she has stuff for the boys. So, there's that coming into play. OP is not an AH for refusing to buy gifts for her sister's boyfriend's children because she doesn't have any strong relationship with them, especially when she is not in the situation of buying gifts for many children. If there were no financial limitations, I would suggest OP to buy some gifts for his children as well, because these gifts would make their relationship stronger. Let's now jump on to the next story from Throwaway 0864 213 570. AITA for refusing to give my 22M ex's 21F stuff back after the breakup. I, 22M, was at my local skate rink and ran into an old friend I knew from middle school, Aussie middle school, so a year 9 to 10, that I had lost contact with. I'll call her Leah, 21F. Leah and I had almost perfect chemistry and ended up dating 2 days later. We dated for about 6 months. We didn't even get as far as kissing. We were still really lovey-dovey and were cuddling and holding hands and going on walks because neither of us could afford proper dates, but both awkward AF, so it ended up being a will they won't they sort of situation where neither of us knew whether we should kiss the other. Neither of us had had our first kiss yet. It was all going well until she randomly stopped responding to all my calls and texts around late January, early February for 2 weeks before sending me a really vague breakup message. Hey, my name but spelled wrong. I'm sure you know what this text is, and I'm sorry things ended this way. You did absolutely nothing wrong, and I do truly hope you can move on and find someone better than me. Truth is, I'm a bad person, and you don't deserve to be treated the way I've been treating you. I'm sorry for ghosting you and not talking to you. I'm sorry I couldn't be the person you need, but I can't let things continue the way they are. I hope you will find a person that makes you happier than I did and can treat you better than I have, and I'm sorry for all the damage I have done. Anyhow, I feel that backstory is relevant because it may be the reason behind her love bombing. Onto that. This August, Leah randomly texted, "I love you," whilst she was in a relationship with a guy I'll call Stone, and on a holiday in Queensland. I'm in Victoria. I knew she was the kind of person who says that sort of thing platonically, but looking back, while we were friends again at that point, we weren't talking too often, and I probably should have caught on that something was off. Long story short, we spent the rest of her holiday calling each night. Near the end, I asked why she was talking to me instead of Stone, and she said their relationship had been a bit rocky. I told her to write up a pros and cons list, and found out he had been making her uncomfortable, occasionally getting aggressive with her, being overly possessive, getting mad when she didn't want sex or to send nudes, harassing her into having sex when she didn't want it, etc. I told her to dump his ass and she didn't listen. The final straw for her was when her best friend catfished Stone, and he attempted to cheat, and Leah cut him off then and there. Leah had plans to have Stone stay at her place the weekend she got back, But for obvious he wasn't coming over, I offered to come over instead to consolidate her and comfort her. One thing led to another, and all of a sudden, we were both dating again. This time, instead of taking it slow, she was instantly getting all handsy and missing me and saying she loves me and giving me gifts. Both of our love languages are gifts and quality time, leaving me feeling like I had to return all these, giving her equal gifts, lending her my hoodies when she lends me hers, saying I love you back, eventually feeling like I needed to lose my virginity to her after she talked me into having with her before I was fully ready. We were only dating for 3-ish months, through until late-ish November, when Stone texted me asking if Leah was okay. I told him, yeah, and entertained the conversation a little. Soon Stone suddenly started talking very strangely, as if he was an old wise man, and said something along the lines of, "Take good care of her now that I'll be gone." I asked him what he meant, and he said he was going to be dead by tomorrow. I asked why, in case he was just ill or something, and he confirmed by I told Leah what was going on, and she said she honestly didn't care if he died. Although I hate this man, it's just not in my nature to just let someone die if I can prevent it. So I called a welfare check on him, and he was found by police completely fine. Apparently his roommate said he does this often for attention, but Leah didn't seem too happy about me helping him. 3 days later, Leah broke up with me claiming that I shouldn't have cared about her ex that much, and I should have focused more on her. She then sent me a photo of my favorite hoodie, which had sentimental value. My great-grandpa had given it to me shortly before he passed, which I had trusted her with because she made me feel so loved, all cut up and a video of her burning a good chunk of the rest of the stuff I had gotten her. She then demanded I returned her hoodies and everything she gave or lent me, even threatening to use the spare key I gave her to break in and steal it all back. So far, I've refused to give the stuff back, and am planning on asking my landlord if I can change the locks. Am I the asshole for accidentally home-wrecking their relationship, then talking to Leah's ex-boyfriend, and now refusing to give her stuff back? TL. My ex-GF burnt all the stuff I gave her, and demanded I gave her back everything she gave me. I refuse. AITA? OP is not the AH. Leah's behavior, including burning gifts and threatening to steal from him, was manipulative and toxic. Refusing to return items she destroyed or threatened to take is a reasonable response given her actions. So, Leah is an AH, and I would rate her 3.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. And OP gets a 0. Let's now jump on to the next story from Hummingbird 679. AITA for feeling happy that my sister sees me like another mother? I, 27F, am the oldest of my siblings. I have a younger brother, 25M. A younger half-sister, 19F, and a younger stepsister, 18F. I love all of them so much, even if I have differing levels of connection with them. I am so proud of how they are all turning out, even if there are definitely things about them that still annoy me. Growing up was not easy for me, particularly because of my mother. Don't get me wrong, I love my mother to death, but she is 100% a narcissist and emotionally manipulative. To the point where the veil fell just a little during a convention we went to recently. I was supposed to be taking my sister as a graduation gift with my brother tagging along, but my mother decided she wanted to go too, and none of us were brave enough to say we didn't want that. And my friends were really concerned, and asked if she always treated me that way. It was confusing for me, because she's been so much worse than that in the past. So, yeah. Growing up there were many incidents, like when I was crying, and she told me I needed to learn to cry silently like the rest of them, or stop doing it. The time she wouldn't let me go to school because she believed something was wrong and wouldn't believe me that I was okay and refused to let me leave until I told her. All the times she forced her way into my room when I wanted to be alone and wouldn't let me be alone to process after a fight with her, and even more that I won't get into here because that's not what this post is about, especially after my bio dad left. But even before that, I felt a responsibility to my younger siblings to be there for them, and honestly, I even had to support my parents during that time a lot too. They're polyamorous, so it was multiple adults reeling and not always dealing with the situation well. I mediated situations with my younger siblings and my mother best I could, drew the attention and the ire as much as I could until I left for college, but I did my best to not talk badly about her. After all, she is still my mother. And underneath all of her mental issues, I truly believe that she thinks what she's doing most of the time is what's best for us, and that she loves us, and she doesn't understand how she's hurting us. If I thought for even a moment that anything she was doing to me or my siblings was purposeful, I would have probably decided to cut her off. But as it is, I just visit occasionally at this point, and mostly contact her over the phone. That way, if she starts being crazy, I can hang up and distance in a way that she never allowed me when I was living there. It's just that you aren't really allowed to have emotions around my mother, and it can get dehumanizing. I still have fits and panic attacks in situations where I feel like I'm not allowed to feel negative emotions and I can't hold them in, but it's something I'm working on. And to be honest, we've been talking about some of the things in the past, and while she gaslights, or attempts to, gaslight me about a lot of things, there is a lot she has taken responsibility for and apologized to me for. However, since I've supported my siblings emotionally so long, and protected my younger sisters especially, my younger brother and I are both autistic, but due to the way he was parented, and being further on the spectrum than me, he could get violent sometimes, and I had to protect my sisters until I managed to get through to him. I've kind of seen myself as another mother to them. I've never said anything about it, because it felt creepy and like I was invalidating our mom, but that was how I had privately felt. So, I was always happy to support them, and make sure they felt like they could come to me to talk about anything, even especially stuff they couldn't tell or feel around our mother. However, recently during an outing, my younger sibling, 19F, said she has always viewed me as kind of a second mother as well, and reiterated this fact again on another outing unprompted. It made me so happy and feel so warm inside to know I wasn't alone in that feeling, even if we both agree it was kind of messed up for me to be parentified that way. But my mom was doing things like purposefully scaring her late at night and making her cry to try and get her to stop being scared of things, so IDK? I feel like I didn't have much of a choice there. But as happy and excited as I am to know, at least one of the three of them feels the same way I do. I feel guilty about it. I know my mom loves us, and I know how hurt she would be if she knew how we felt, and that I was happy that my siblings saw me as a mother sometimes more than her. Obviously, I'm never going to let her know, both for her sake and for mine and the rest of the family, but that's just made me feel guiltier about it. I know I haven't outlined a lot of my mother's positive traits in this, but she's not a bad person deep down. Just, she believes she knows how other people feel and won't listen to you when you try to inform her otherwise most of the time. She still helped me through a lot, and is always there when I need her. She's the only mother I have, and I feel so guilty about being happy about this, so I felt like I needed to ask. Am I the OP is not the AH. She has been emotionally supporting her siblings due to a difficult family dynamic. Feeling validated as a second mother by their sister is understandable, especially considering their mother's behavior. The guilt is understandable, but not deserved. AITA for telling my sister her baby's name sounds ridiculous, and she should change it? My 29F sister Claire, 34F, is pregnant with her first child, and I'm genuinely happy for her. She's had a rough couple of years, so it's nice to see her so excited about something. That said, she's taken the excitement to a weird level. She's decided to name her baby something unique, and I think it's borderline cruel. The name she's chosen for her future daughter? Malaya Serafin. Yes, spelled exactly like that. Claire insists it's pronounced Malaya Serafin, but she's adamant about keeping the creative spelling because normal names are boring, and my daughter deserves to stand out. When she told me, I was caught off guard and just blurted out, "Are you serious?" She looked hurt and asked why I didn't like it, so I, probably too bluntly, said, "Because it sounds like a Wi-Fi password." Claire immediately got defensive, saying I was being judgmental and unsupportive, and that no one else had a problem with it. Side note, I later found out our dad laughed out loud when he heard it, but tried to cover it up. I tried to tread carefully, but I told her I thought the spelling was going to make her daughter's life harder than it needed to be. Teachers, doctors, employers, everyone will constantly be mispronouncing it or spelling it wrong. Claire shot back that it's her child, and I don't get a say. And I need to get with the times, because kids today have unique names, and no one cares anymore. Here's where things got worse. At a family dinner, Claire brought up the name again, and I made the mistake of saying, "You know, you're naming a person, not a fairy in a fantasy novel." She stormed out, and now she's refusing to speak to me, unless I apologize for mocking her creativity. My dad is staying out of it, but my stepmom thinks I was wrong to criticize the name, and should just let Claire do what she wants. I love my sister, but I can't shake the feeling that she's prioritizing her ego over her baby's future. Am I the for being honest, or should I have kept my opinion to myself? OP is a little bit H for being too blunt and mocking. While Claire's name choice is questionable, OP could have voiced concerns more tactfully instead of ridiculing her sister. So, as for scores, I would rate OP 2.5 out of 5 on the AH scale, and Claire gets a 0. Let's now jump onto the next story from complete-might-5559. AITA for wanting to stay up late on my last free of responsibility holiday. I, 18F, have recently graduated high school. Australia school ends Octnov for grads. And turned 18. I don't plan to take a year break. I plan to get into work straight away 2025 while I try to get an apprenticeship for my dream job. A lot more background context, as I believe I need to give a lot to not seem like a massive in general, is I'm severely disabled and have had a very rocky relationship with my parents for years. My 40F mum believes I use my disabilities as an excuse for everything. Won't say much here as it just be a trauma dump, but I'm seen as the failure of the family to the point where she accidentally even admitted a year ago she didn't love me. I know my disabilities cause a lot of my pathways to be cut off, but I still want to do pathways and try hard, pushing my own boundaries to show I can act not disabled. When my mum says I use my disability to not do things, it's for stupid things like not wanting to go to an overcrowded event where I have to stand for long periods. Leg issues plus autism plus other issues, but it's never for jobs and responsibilities. She is the one that uses my disabilities as an excuse. Oh, I want to work in childcare, but I'm too disabled according to my mum. I want to do tattoo work? Too disabled. I want to do anything work related. I'm too disabled. She discourages me from everything, telling me to avoid getting jobs I believe I can do, but also, if I don't get a job, I risk being kicked out. She only stopped with the childcare thing as I got work placement through school with kids and proved her wrong. I plan to get a job. In January-start of February, the reason I'm not doing it now is because I am recovering from a surgery, one of which is in my feet so I can't stand for more than 10 minutes without severe pains and can't wear enclosed shoes. I decided I will wait for surgery recovery and wait to get my tattoo, birthday gift from Dad, so I have no open wounds-injuries as I start. Because I want to start professionally and in a way that is good for my resume, I've had volunteering work placement jobs before, so I know how to be professional from experience. I don't want my first out-of-school job to go wrong from being dumb. Simple. And my mum knows this, as I've told her. So, I taking this into consideration, wanted to have my last bit of childhood, really. Last bit of not having proper responsibilities to myself. So I stay up late gaming with my friends, not loudly, as my mum only realizes I'm awake when she gets up to pee or deal with the cats. We stay up, play dumb games, read subreddits, watch movies. It gets to sometimes 2 a.m. Usually it's maxed at 1 a.m. My mum is threatening to shut off my internet at 12 a.m. every night now, which usually means sooner. They've done 10 p.m. before repeatedly, talking about me being irresponsible, mocking me at dinner-lunch for my sleep patterns and the way I am. Not doing it over money concerns with bills, but over being disappointed in me for acting this way. I get that staying up late isn't good for sleep schedules, but a disability, won't go into, I have makes me severely tired, have fatigue, it has my entire life, so I understand when I should go to bed if I have work. As yet again I've had work placement. I know how my body works and reacts to different sleeping times-patterns. I know that if I go to bed at a certain time, I'll wake up a certain time and have to nap at a certain time. I know the specific times I need to do to get a good sleep schedule for working. I'm not dumb about my own body. I don't plan to do this every night until I work. I plan to stop once it gets around time to work. I can reset my sleep schedule incredibly fast. I know that as I know me. But my mum treats me as if I don't. She treats me as if I'm ruining my chances at ever being good at working. Even making it clear she believes it will mess me up for working through saying so. I think I'd be more understanding if it was about the bills, but I'm an adult who just wants to spend the last bit of my free time on my last ever school holidays, doing what I want as late as I want, because it's the last time I can do that really. If it was about bills, I'd be willing to give some of my birthday money to contribute, so I'm not a disturbance for using internet this late. I've talked to a friend about it, and they agree the threats to turn off internet are out there, but we are both neurodivergent, don't get social cues. So, I need a second opinion. I just don't get why I'm not allowed a few weeks of freedom. I'm not waking people up. I tend to whisper to not wake everyone up. They only realize I'm awake when they wake themselves up. It's not like I'm going to do this for months. It's 2 months max before I get to bed at a proper time and go to work. AITA? Slight out of point note. I'm not going into most of my disability due to the nature of a lot of my disabilities. If I were to tell them, some people would know who I was. OP is not the AH. She is an adult responsibly planning for work and just want a short period of freedom before responsibilities begin. Her mom's control seems more about power than genuine concern, especially given her history of discouragement. So, OP's mom is an AH, and I would rate her 3.5 out of 5 on the AH scale, and OP gets a 0. Let's now move on to the next story from Celebration Cool 7393. AITA for telling my friend she can't do my sister's hair because of what my sister has done to me. I live with my cousin. We have called each other sisters basically our entire lives, and I will call her my sister for this story. So basically my mum took kinship care over her about 10 years ago now, taking her out of foster care. I have done so much for her over these years, including letting her live with me when I moved out of our house for a bit, because she didn't want to live there anymore either. Anyway, last year I made a new friend. We got extremely close, and because my sister lived with me too, they got to know each other as well, and over the months they slowly started to get closer. My sister had a boyfriend, now her ex, and it was very toxic. When they broke up, my sister and friend started hanging out a lot more. One day he was threatening to come over and talk to her face to face. He was high on drugs, and I was about to leave for work. Knowing my friend wasn't working that day, I rang her and asked if she could come over and just stay with my sister, just in case he rocked up as she was alone in the house. She went over and they spent the day together. Ever since that day, they had started pushing me to the side. When I questioned this, the friend said it was because my sister was going through stuff with her ex and needed someone to talk to. At the time, I understood and thanked friend for being there for her. Then a week or so later, it is mine and my sister's birthdays. We are a day apart with hers being first. The friend made a big deal out of her birthday that morning with a post on Instagram with multiple photos of them, which was fine of course. We all went out for dinner that night for a joint birthday dinner. Myself, sister, friend, friend's boyfriend, and my mum. And I could tell the vibe was off with the friend. She was just cold to me and not engaging or initiating conversation at all. That weekend, we all went away as we had booked to stay somewhere for our birthdays. I messaged the friend the morning of saying I did not want her to come if she was going to be weird with me and be there for my sister more than me. Keep in mind my sister is 16 and this friend is 25. She said of course she is there for me more than her, as we were meant to be best friends, and my sister was just the tag along. The weekend happens and we are all hanging out together and everything seems fine. Forward a week later from then, I messaged the friend asking if she wanted to go to a waterfall for the day, and she replied with, she had plans with her boyfriend. Okay, that's fine. But then I see my sister getting ready. As she's about to walk out the door, I ask her where she is going. She says out with her friends from school. I had friend's location at the time, and seen she was out the front of my house. She was picking my sister up and lied to me about it. This is when I absolutely lose my shit. All the lies and betrayal finally weighed on me, and I call my mum spiraling. For some stupid reason, she calls the friend and tells her what's happening and asks her to come and check on me. I had locked all of the doors so none of them could get in, but of course my sister was there, and she had a house key. My sister waits in the car, and friend and her boyfriend come into my room. I am naked having a shower, bawling my eyes out, with music blasting, trying to calm myself down, and in they walk. The boyfriend stands at the bathroom door, with his back turned so he can't see, like a security guard standing out the front of a nightclub, because my mum told her to be careful going in, as I was going crazy, and was in the state of mind to punch a in the face, especially her. She tried to reason with me, saying they were just going for a drive, then they were going to drop my sister back off, and then go and do their plans for the day. I screamed at her, and told them to get the out of my house. I felt more betrayed by my sister than I did her for lying to me about where she was going, and who it was with, because that is my family, and I would never do that to her behind her back with her own friends. This would be like me hanging out with one of my sister's 16-year-old friend at my age of 23, and not telling her about it. So, my sister and her ex started talking again, and she told him I had chased her around the house with a knife when this happened. She did not even get out of the car. That is not a little white lie. That is something major to lie about, and could have gotten me in trouble. Fast forward to this day, my sister and I do not speak, and we still live in the same house. And yes, the friend and my sister are still friends. They hang out constantly and walk around on the phone 24/7, and my sister puts her on loudspeaker, hoping I hear that they are talking, like it's a brag. My mom is completely on my side, and so is our whole family and everyone I tell this story to. I have had to put a camera in my room as she kept on coming in and stealing my things. A couple of weeks ago, an actual friend of mine broke up with her boyfriend, and we decided that it would be good if she moved in with me into the spare bedroom. Now I have noticed my sister trying to get close with her too. She tries to have conversations with her when me and my friend are sitting together, and the other day asked her to do her hair. Actual friend was a hairdresser. Before this friend moved in, she knew the situation with my sister and was on my side. I told her that if she wanted to live here, she needed to accept my boundaries, and one of those was not being close with my sister. Civil is fine. Yes, this may seem harsh, but given what I just went through with her and losing a close friend because of it, meant I was putting in firm boundaries. Of course, I want her to be comfortable and small talk with her is okay. I just don't want them hanging out or doing anything friendly. Basically, just be roommates. The other day, my sister asked again if she would do her hair for her, and my friend agreed and said only if she pays her. I did not know about this until hearing her talk about it with my mom. I of course got upset, because this was one of the things I had asked her not to do. It will make me feel extremely uncomfortable, considering my sister hasn't even apologized to me for what she has done, and we aren't talking. I do not want my friend being manipulated by her too, and risk going through that whole situation again. I told my friend I don't want her doing my sister's hair, and if she really cared about the money so much, I would send her what she would have paid to get it done. Am I being petty in this situation? Should I just let it go? It's hard because I know in my sister's narcissistic mind, she will think she is one-upping me again and creeping her way into another one of my friendships. I don't know what to do. To add, me, my mum, sister, and now my friend all rent a house together. I don't live alone anymore, just with my sister. So, I can't necessarily kick her out, as my mum won't allow that. She is now 17. Edit. For anyone saying this is fictional, it is not. I am diagnosed with autism as well as ADHD, dyslexia, and the list goes on. So, I'm sorry if the story is a bit all over the place and written bad. I tried my best. OP is not the AH for enforcing boundaries after her sister's extreme betrayal and lies. Given past experiences, her concerns about losing another friend are valid. Her request isn't unreasonable. She just wants respect and distance from a toxic sibling, which is her very right. As for scores, I would rate OP's sister 2.5 out of 5 on the AH scale, and OP gets a 0. Let's now jump on to the next story from Mother of Sheefords. AITA for cutting my ex out of our dogs' lives. I, 34F, was dating my ex, 37M, for 13 years. I own my own house, which we lived together in with our 3 dogs aged 4, 8, and 11 years old for 8 years. I purchased them all myself, signed the adoption-purchase papers alone, took them to all of their obedience and sports classes, worked through potty training and behavioral issues alone, brought them to the vet alone, cared for them when they were ill, kept track of and gave them their required meds alone, groomed and bathed them, cleaned all their poop from the backyard, fed them, and was overall the main caretaker. My ex worked out of town on dash-off for the last 8 years for variable times, usually a week or 2 at a time, but sometimes for up to 2-month stints. There were some years he was barely home. I've never minded being the sole caretaker, as that means I could accomplish training goals easier, and we got used to my ex not being around a lot or relying on him. He would play dash walk dash, interact with them when he was home, but was never involved in their training dash activities, dash general care. He calls them his babies, and it's obvious that he loves them very much, and they love him too. However, they are just fine with his absence as well. My ex would help fund their food dash vet bills and would contribute financially to my house as well. I charged him $600 in rent. I paid full utilities and taxes, mortgage is $1,200 per month, and he would do fixes around the house when time allowed. Him, his brothers, and I finished my roughed-in basement and bathroom with his expertise. He got a lot of free supplies at work and had a lot of tools already from his work to use, but did have to buy specific tools for the bathroom job and bought a lot of the supplies for the bathroom. I did contribute as well, but not as heavily. As part of our agreement for the bathroom, his dad was allowed to live with us for free for as long as he wanted during a rough patch in his marriage, though he only ended up staying a month. We have been broken up for 9 months and have been sharing the dogs. He lives with his parents now, works out of town a lot still, and will come take the dogs for a walk a few times a month, or take a dog for the weekend. His parents are not dog people, and do not like having the dogs around, so having him keep even one dog at his house doesn't work. He still calls them his dogs though. When he left initially, he put a TV dinner tray through my wall because he was mad that I apologized for wasting his time. When I changed the locks on the door after he moved out, he blew up on me and came over to yell at me about how stupid it was that he didn't have access to my house anymore, as it meant much less access to the dogs for him. He also told me he should go destroy my bathroom that he just renovated and played the victim, until I felt bad enough that I agreed to terms I was not comfortable with just to get out of the situation. Throughout our relationship, he had an explosive anger problem that was random and did result in holes in the wall several times. He refused to admit it was an issue. Each argument we had, he would bring back every mistake I had made, to the point where I still cry/scream at myself when I take a wrong turn in a car, or get anxiety when I'm wrong, as it might get thrown in my face for the next 13 years. He was constantly putting me down for my actions, -thoughts-looks, and strung me along for a long time about wanting kids. He never supported me through our infertility journey or my miscarriage. He never put his hands on me, but his abusive behavior and history of explosive anger make me worried that if I take the dogs away, he will get violent, either physically or verbally. I did offer to give him one of my dogs when he has a more stationary job. Dash has his own place and have a clean split, but he was adamant that he wanted to stay in all the dogs' lives. He is a horrible partner, but he loves the dogs very much and would likely take good care of them. I have since changed my mind, however, and want to keep all of my dogs that I have carefully raised. I can't imagine being tied to this man anymore. I don't want to co-own co-parent dogs with him for the next 7+ years. I want to be free to start a new relationship family without him looming in the background. I don't enjoy having to see talk to him. It brings up bad memories and pain. I don't know if cutting him out completely is the right thing to do though, and I feel really guilty about it. He helped me out financially with them for years. He helped take care of them. He loves and cares for them, and was there for most of their lives. He also helped me out financially by finishing my basement bathroom, which I am incredibly grateful for. He saved me several thousand than if I had to do it myself, and I learned a lot about home renovations from him. AITA. If I didn't let him see the dogs anymore, if I do cut him out, how do I do it so it causes him the least amount of pain and keeps me safe? He lives very close to me now, and while he doesn't have a history of violence, his anger issues mean that retaliation/violence isn't out of the question. I would love to take the dogs and run, but financial situations and the housing market means that I'm stuck where I'm at, 5 minutes from where he currently lives. OP is not an AH for prioritizing her mental health and moving on from an abusive relationship. The dogs are her responsibility, and she should be able to set boundaries without feeling guilty for protecting herself. So, OP is not an AH, and I would rate her 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. As for OP's ex-boyfriend, I would rate him 2.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now move on to the next story from Jailamara44. AITA for not acting as if nothing had happened after my friend reported me to the police? I'm in my last year of college, literally 2 weeks away from graduating, and I'll probably never see him again, so I want to know if it's worth forgiving and forgetting. For some context, I had a best friend, Philip, who I've been friends with since elementary school. We went to the same college to be together, and because we were both afraid of being alone, we're both kind of shy and misfits. Philip managed to make friends, while I couldn't break out of my shell, so honestly, I've been holding on to him a lot throughout college. I have a disease that makes my joints hurt, Hurt a lot to the point where I feel like I'm going to pass out. I take pain medication to control the pain, but it usually takes a few minutes to take effect. A month ago, we were leaving to class when the pain started. I took the medicine, but all I wanted to do was go home, take a cold shower, and try to sleep. The pain was getting more intense. Philip wanted to keep talking, and I wasn't listening. We have this game where we push each other playfully, or we tickle each other while we pull each other when we're not paying attention, and he started doing it. I told him to stop several times because I felt like my bones were breaking. I felt like my hip was about to explode, and as if instead of blood, I had needles in my bones. He kept pushing me, and finally, I got tired, and I pushed him. I didn't think much and ran home, which luckily is close to the university. I took a shower and went to bed, waiting for the medicine to take effect. Then I fell asleep. When I woke up, I noticed a lot of messages and missed calls. I always have my phone on Do Not Disturb. I was confused because several messages were from Philip's friends insulting me. It turns out that when I pushed him, I made him lose his balance, and since we were on the second floor, he fell down the stairs and broke his nose. I tried to communicate and apologize, but he had blocked me. The next day, I was summoned to the dean's office of my degree, and Philip's mother was there with the police to file a complaint against me for assault. I admit that I was scared and felt like my life was over. When I returned home, I told my mother about the situation, and she accompanied me to the university. She asked to see the security camera images, where Philip was seen jokingly pushing me and shaking me several times, and that I asked him to move away or tried to leave. The police took it as an accident, and in the end the process came to nothing. Philip's mother kept insisting that I should at least pay the hospital bills since the injury was serious. I did it only because I wanted to have a clear conscience. I thought that would be all, but Philip finally came back to class a week ago to turn in the necessary documents for graduation and talk to me. Apparently, he never wanted to report me, but since his nose was broken, the university staff called a relative to go look for him. That relative was his mother, and she found out what happened. She made a scandal at the university, which made more people find out what happened. She was the one who blocked me from Philip's phone and proceeded with the complaint. And since he was in the hospital, he didn't find out until it was too late. He has asked me to just forget about him. We have been friends for almost 14 years, and I know that my life without him will be difficult. He's almost the only friend I have in the world, but I feel strange. It's almost as if he were another person with the same face and voice of the friend I love. He has tried to return my money, but nothing feels the same. Several of Philip's friends have contacted me to apologize for insulting me and asked me to accept it since it was all an accident. But every time I think about it, I feel like crying. I know what happened was an accident, and Philip is the main victim, but this is not the first time he has done something to hurt me. I know I shouldn't feel this way, but this feels like one more betrayal, only this one is not one I can forgive. AITA? OP is not an AH. While the situation was an accident, Philip's actions and the subsequent betrayal by his mother left OP feeling hurt and betrayed. It's understandable that OP may struggle to forgive, especially after the police involvement. As for Philip, he is an AH, and I would rate him 3.5 out of 5 on the AH scale, and OP gets nothing. Let's now move on to the next story from Guest TPR 1C3. AITA for lying to my mother about every aspect of my life. My mum, 46F, and I, 17 Trans M, have been living alone, the two of us, for some time now since Dad left home. All good with him. Nothing to say. I get along with him, and I don't blame him for doing that. But sticking to the point, my mother and I have been living together for a few years. When I was little, we got along pretty well, except for the hurtful comments a Latina mother makes to her, then daughter, and my submissive attitude towards her. But in spite of that, I loved her. I still love her. She is my mom, after all. But it all starts when I'm about 11, 12? I'm not really sure, but it's in that awkward time where you are forging your own thoughts, and you are a fool in everything. This happened in the middle of the pandemic, with all my changes of tastes, and so I started to close myself more, want my space, and so, as any pre-puberty would want. But I started to keep secrets, many more secrets, and especially to escape from my mother when she wanted to check my phone. She did this since he bought me my first phone. We always had problems with that, but until then, nothing serious. But since then, I had started experimenting with my and gender. Nothing weird. I just had this weird feeling of, oh, I think I like being treated like a boy. And well, my mom had always shown the typical, I support him until he's my son. So I started to shut down more and more, and my mom noticed it. She hated it, and usually yelled at me for closing my door, or hiding my phone, or getting extremely nervous when I checked my computer. But here's a little detail. I was always very submissive. I never yelled at my mother or anything. I saw many times how she yelled and cried when I revealed myself, and, until now, I never revealed myself to her. And well, the whole pandemic was horrible. I just wanted to tell her that I had never revealed myself to her. The whole pandemic was horrible. I never thought, nor do I really think, of telling my mother about my trans identity or anything like that. So naturally, we started to drift apart and she, well, tried to force it. I still remember how she would scream and cry in front of me, frantic as she screamed at me, I don't even know you, God. You are like your father, a stranger. Words from a fight we had when I was about 12 years old. I think it was because I hadn't told her about wanting to dye my hair. So in all these years, we have been very far apart since, well, I lie to her about everything. Yes, I lie to her about everything. From what they call me at school, to what movies I like, or how I want to dress. I don't like to tell her the truth. It terrifies me. It terrifies me because of all the things she has said. From a simple comment she feels unimportant to a hurtful phrase she said years ago. I don't feel like she does anything wrong. I know deep down she cares about me, but I really can't help lying to her, and I don't even do anything wrong. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I don't go to parties. She won't let me leave the house. I don't even know half the city I grew up in. I get good grades. I'm quiet. And I don't do it because I don't want to. Believe me, sometimes I would love to know what a party is like, how it feels to smoke a blunt, or how vodka burns my throat just to relax a little, but I do it because I'm afraid. I'm afraid she will find out and hate me. That's why I lie to her. She doesn't know any aspect of my personal life. It's all lies. She thinks I'm a shy, straight woman. I don't like lying to her, but it's necessary. I don't want her to criticize every thought or taste I have. And can you imagine if she found out how they call me and treat me at school? She would kill me. She would kick me out of the house. Sometimes I wish that would happen. That way I feel I would have a taste of freedom, and at least I wouldn't be in her way anymore. But I feel bad, son. Daughter, for her, but I don't want us to hate each other. But I have never imagined my adult life with her. So, tell me, do you think I'm a bad son? Or is it because of my age? Should I start being more honest? Or is our relationship already lost? I don't want her to hate me. Sometimes I wish I had my old mama back. OP is not an AH. The fear of rejection and the trauma from his mother's hurtful comments led to lying as a coping mechanism. OP is trying to protect himself, and the situation is rooted in fear, not malice. As for scores, I would rate OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale, and OP's mom 1.5 out of 5. What do the Mac Reddit fans think? Is the OP an AH or not? Let me know in the comment section below. If you like the stories I brought you, just hit the like button, share them as much as you can, and don't forget to subscribe to Mac Reddit for a daily dose. Bye bye. See you tomorrow with some more spicy fries.